Rifters, we are live on the Go Network. I'm your host, as always, John. Unfortunately, my co-host Jason is not here tonight. He had some other things to do, but that's okay. We still have Dimitri in the booth. And tonight, we have a fantastic guest, a huge guest. We have the Pogo King himself, King IV, who's one of the greatest and brightest minds when it comes to Pokemon Go. His YouTube videos have helped so many trainers prepare their teams for the Silpharina Cup in Season 1. And now, today, the first day of Season 2, he's here to help us and you guys prepare for your Season 2 Cups. He's also the champion of the first official Pokemon Go PvP tournament, which was held in Washington, D.C. It was actually promoted by the Pokemon Company, so it was like their real official tournament. It wasn't Silph-related, and he was the winner of that. So he's not just a smart guy when it comes to strategy. He's also a great battler in his own right. So we are here with King. King, how you doing today?
Thank you, John, for having me on. Pretty excited to be on here. I always love talking about Pokemon Go PvP, and you gave me maybe like a more than generous introduction. So thank you for that.
Well, I refer to you as the godfather of PvP because so many people always mention how you kind of gave them their push to either do videos or to do PvP. So, you know.
I like to think about myself more like the loving grandmother of PvP, right? You know, I'm always there supporting people, helping along the way, listening to their stories, and then giving solid advice. So that's how I like to view myself.
So, King, like I like to ask everybody when they come on the show, how did you find your love for Pokemon, and what got you started in YouTube videos? Like, how did you get your start in YouTube?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So, in terms of how I got started in Pokemon, so when Pokemon first came out, you know, I played like Yellow, Blue, and Red. Played a little bit of Generation 2, Gold and Silver, and then I kind of like fell off the game and didn't really like keep track. I watched some shows and some episodes and like, you know, kept up to date a little bit. So I knew about it in like popular culture. But then when Pokemon Go came out in the US, it was released like 11 days before it was released in Canada. And my students, so I teach at a university, my students were playing the game during the break, and one of my students was catching a Voltorb.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, what's this? Like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, we're playing Pokemon Go. You know, professor, you should try it out, blah, blah. And then I kind of researched it. I'm like, oh, it's not released in Canada yet. You know, then I started watching some of like trainer tips videos and Ali A and some of the stuff to like kind of get familiar with the game. And then I when it came out, I installed it, and then here we are in terms of me playing the game. And it's a whole long story. I could talk about 10 hours about that. But that's the abbreviated version. And then how I got started on YouTube. You know, for my class, I create YouTube videos, creating tutorials on how to so I teach business analytics. So like how to use certain software. So I'm like familiar with some of the like basic editing and uploading to YouTube. And I thought like, oh, I'll just share some of my game experience because after I downloaded Pokemon Go, it was the first time that I got really entrenched in watching other people game, and it was kind of like a new form of entertainment for me. So I was like, oh, you know, I can share some of my experiences, and I kind of like dabbled here and there, did like some like videos taking down level 10 gyms and then all sorts of stuff, and I didn't really start like taking it more seriously until like raids came out and teaching people how to do certain raids and different raid challenges.
Wow, that's awesome. So where do you, if you don't mind me asking, where do you teach? What college?
So I teach at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. About like hour and a half outside of Toronto, where I'm based out of.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. I actually did it. I watching your videos, I kind of you mentioned being a teacher, but I wasn't sure that you were like legitimately a teacher. So that's so cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, you know, that's why I like Pokemon Go. It gives me in my life, I like to teach and help people. So Pokemon Go has certainly given me the opportunity to teach and help people get better at the game and be more engaged in the community.
So, what is your favorite all-time Pokemon, and what is your favorite PvP Pokemon?
Okay, yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, for me, I don't necessarily have a favorite, but if I were to say one of my friends, she's like very much into like what the spirit, what's your spirit Pokemon, and then she's like giving all like these like good analogies for people, and then she told me that my spirit Pokemon is Ho-Oh, because Ho-Oh is like a phoenix, helps people rise from the ashes. So I thought that was a really really good metaphor and kind of aligns with what I like to do. So I like to think of myself as the Phoenix Pokemon.
I can see that. That's
Uh,
pretty awesome.
and then in terms of favorite PvP Pokemon, it kind of changes cup to cup, and I'm really entrenched in Sinister Cup right now, so I'm really liking Dusclops. I kind of like the design of it and its moves and its animation. So kind of like a flavor of the month for me right now
Okay.
is Dusclops.
All right. For me, I've always been a big Feraligatr guy. It's been my favorite Pokemon
Okay.
since I was like younger. And I would say for PvP, I'm a big Alolan Raichu fan.
Ooh, that's a good one. I actually just did a video on a lone Raichu in the Sinister Cup, so that's a good one. It's a really nice design, and
Yeah.
it's a really fun Pokemon to use, especially with its new moveset.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of spammy Pokemon, and it's like the king of spam. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's
but
an
we'll
excellent choice.
we'll definitely get into Raichu and all them a little later on.
Mhm.
So, I figured we could open up with the update. It was a
Okay.
huge update for Pokemon Go, and generally we don't get too many battle updates that are as big as this one. I felt this was pretty big, so I figured we could go over it, and you could give us your thoughts on everything. And it's been a couple
Sh-
days since it's been out, so now that people's had some play testing and everything, so we can actually like really get into it.
Yeah, so in fact, the entire update actually hasn't even rolled out yet
Oh
because
wow, really?
the one I'll talk about that last. But the last part of the update will have perhaps like the biggest impact for the most competitive players. But in terms of the update to it, it's really just like adding a bunch of moves and rebalancing some moves. So one of the biggest rebalances of moves was around Power Up Punch. So Power Up Punch previously was 35 energy, 40 damage, which made it like a like not a great move, but like a pretty decent damage move. Plus the buff made it just like one of the best charge moves. We used to joke when we theory craft on like how Pokemon can get better. We would just always put Power Up Punch in PV Poke as one of the custom moves and see the win rate just like go through the roof. So we always said like a Power Up Punch always just makes a Pokemon better. But now they've decreased the damage from 40 to 20, which makes it aligned to Acid Spray in terms of damage. So it doesn't do very much damage
Yeah.
at all. And now you kind of make a decision. Do you want to go for the buff, or do you want to the ideal situation is that you do Power Up Punch and they shield, right? So that's you go for the buff. That's kind of like the shield baiting. Or do you go for the stronger move like Hydro Pump, Dynamic Punch, Psychic? Kind of makes it a little bit more dynamic of a game. It did nerf some of the fighters like Medicham, Poliwrath, Hitmonchan, Lucario quite a bit, but it certainly makes it more exciting. They reconfigured and buffed Psychic. Psychic was like one of those like joke moves in for charge moves that it would just take
Yeah.
forever to get to. But now they've reduced it down from I think it was like 70 energy to 55, which
Yeah.
certainly makes it way more viable and way more spammy. And they reduced the damage only by 10, so it's actually a more energy efficient move. And it really, in my opinion, lines up psychic charge moves really nicely. So you have like Psyshock, which is I think like 40 energy and X number of damage,
Yeah.
and then you have Psychic, and then you have Future Sight. And as you progress up further, you get become more damage and energy efficient, which I think is really cool. And that's how it should be. You should be rewarded if it takes more time to get to the charge move to do more damage with that energy.
I agree. And it kind of puts it on the same line with like an Earth Power type moves.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you get that 10% chance of maybe decreasing their defense, that's pretty
Yeah,
cool too.
it's huge. It's huge, especially like in a really bad matchup. If you can soften up your opponent for your next Pokemon, it really makes it like a decent setup move. And then one move that I think will have a big impact once this move is applicable to the self arena cups, or if you're doing general Great League, like Open Great League or Draft Tournament, is Snarl. Snarl like was a move that when you think about Umbreon has Faint Attack and Snarl, and like they were pretty similar moves. Like Snarl was slightly more energy efficient and like a little less damage, but like effectively the outcomes were pretty similar between the two. But most of the time you preferred Snarl. Now they've clearly made Snarl one of those like high energy generation moves, only behind like the very top tier like Mudshot, Thundershock, and Psycho Cut, and they with Snarl it does like a little bit more damage than those moves. So it's a really nice move. It makes Pokemon like Umbreon from like a pretty like a moderate spammer to like a really big spammer, and with its bulk, it's gonna make it a huge terror. It like flips some matches that it historically lost. It historically had like a really close matchup with Altaria in the 0 and 1 shield matchup. Now with Snarl, it actually allows it to flip that matchup and do really well. So it should be a really interesting Pokemon. And there's a lot of Pokemon that are going to be coming out.
Yeah, like
And
Scrafty.
Scrafty and Mandibuzz that are going to come out and have access to Snarl. So it's going to really change the dynamic of their gameplay, and as well Suicune.
Right.
A historically really defensive Pokemon, and something that I was talking about at Pokemon Worlds, talking with like a bunch of like people there. I'm like, man, like they kind of gave Suicune the short end of the stick, right? Like it's
Yeah, they
terrible
did.
in raids, right? No one wants Suicune, but one of its defining features, because when we look at Pokemon Go, I really like the balance. So those like Glass Cannon, really high attack Pokemon, really great in raids, really great in gyms. Those like lower stat totals but really high bulk Pokemon are really great in PvP. And then you have like the really great stats Pokemon but are really bulky, like lower attack, are really great as gym defenders. But Suicune, even though it's really defensive and has like a lower stat product overall, like it just like but it's stats like work out pretty well for PvP. It just like it's like one of the worst Great League Pokemon. But
Yeah.
now with Snarl, it makes it pretty interesting, and the fact that they made Bubble Beam this like defense drop
Yeah.
makes it some really interesting matchups. And I tried a Bubble Beam like on one of my streams. I had I used Bubble Beam on a Golduck, and then I swapped in, and then it allowed my next Pokemon to survive the opposing Pokemon charge move. So there's going to be some like really interesting strategies. And I
All
don't
right.
want to go. I could talk about this for like 10 hours,
So,
but like Thunderfang, Ice Fang, adding it to a bunch of different Pokemon, like Mawile could be really interesting in Open Great League. Drapion getting Ice Fang is really interesting too. So it makes these, for me, I think a really competitive meta is when you go into a cup and there are multiple moveset options.
yes, I agree.
Right? You're not just like, okay, this. I don't want someone. I kind of want to say like, oh, what moveset should I run on X Pokemon? And I don't want to say like, oh, you should for sure run this. I think a healthy competitive meta says like, well, you can run this if you want to cover this. You can run this if you want to cover this, or you want to flip this matchup. So I think those are really cool. Then obviously Alolan Raichu getting Thundershock, Alolan Sandslash. They're really loving these Alolan Pokemon
Yeah.
getting Ice Punch, and then one of my favorites, Alolan Ninetales getting Charm,
Which could
I
be
think is
huge.
really big contrast from its other typical fast move, which is Powder Snow, which is like low damage, high energy. So it's really a really nice touch, and gives it. And then there's a whole bunch of other moves that are added to different Pokemon.
So
that
before we
are
get
gonna,
too deep, let's kind
yes,
of go back to Snarl for a little bit.
sure,
So there's some really cool Pokemon that get Snarl right now
okay,
that
sure,
maybe haven't been great for PvP,
yeah,
but now I feel maybe do have a chance. So you have
yep.
someone like Houndoom or Luxray or Crawdaunt, which
Cardon,
gets
yeah, for
Bubble
sure.
Beam and Snarl.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Um, Crawdon, it also gets Crabhammer, right?
Yeah.
Right. So Crabhammer, decent move, and with Night Slash, like it gives you like really great coverage, and it actually makes it a lot better. I actually didn't think of that one. That's really good. Like when the Pokemon is really squishy, you want it to have like really spammy moves because it's not going to be in the battle
Right.
that long, so you can at least put some shield pressure on.
So speaking of squishy Pokemon, do you think Weavile will now have a chance in PvP with Snarl?
I don't think in Great League, just because I think there's a lot of alternatives. But when it comes to the Ice and Dark Pokemon, besides the Weavile Pokemon line, is there another Pokemon that's Ice and Dark? I don't think so. But the thing is, like,
Yeah, I don't know.
Ice as a subtyping is really terrible. Ice as a defensive typing, I think Ice only resists Ice. That's
Yeah, yeah, I think
yeah,
so.
it's actually really bad. Like, and then it's weak to a number of like fighting, steel, fire. So it's like a really
Rock as
terrible
well.
defensive typing. So like the ice typing doesn't really help it when you're going into a dark meta cup, but it might help the other side if you're an ice type and you have the dark typing and you want to resist. I don't know, for whatever reason they have like ghost and dark on the other side, then it could have some play, but it's like way too squishy. It does have like really interesting moves though, like Avalanche, Foul Play. Those are really great charge moves. Avalanche, one of the best charge moves. One of those like very few charge moves that break that, like, what do they call, like, or break or tie the 2.0. What I mean by that is like the damage is double the energy.
Right.
And there's very few moves like that. And typically they're moves that are either community day moves, like Frenzy Plant,
Or
like
Blast
Blast
Burn, yep.
Burn, Hydro Cannon, or they're moves that like cost a bajillion energy, like Focus Blast, like Draco Meteor. But Avalanche only being 45 and doing 90 damage, incredible move. So it might have some play, and I never want to rule out a Pokemon because there's so many times where I remember the first time I think I did Boulder Cup, and then someone brought in like a Quagsire. I'm like, when would you ever want to use a Quagsire?
Right.
When you have Wish Cash, right? Whenever those two Pokemon are available, you would always choose Wish Cash. And this is me being ignorant. And then I think in the Tempest Cup, Quagsire ended up being slightly more preferred than Wish Cash because of that Stone Edge potential and that Earthquake nuke. So became like a really great closing Pokemon. So in the right situation, in the right favorable meta, like any Pokemon can become great.
So last Pokemon when it comes to Snarl, this is a Pokemon that I kind of like, and I haven't really seen it get too much play, but Honchkrow, which is kind of
Honchkrow, yeah, yeah.
little bulky. Do you think you could
Uh,
see that in the future?
I,
Maybe
I think so. Especially it has access to Sky Attack. I don't know what Dark move. I can't remember if it's Dark Pulse
it's Dark
or
Pulse.
okay. It's still a really great move overall. A little bit less preferred in general compared to Foul Play, but Dark Pulse is still a really great move, and I think we'll definitely see some play as long as the meta favors it. Flying typing does make the fighting moves neutral, so and then you have Sky Attack that can hit the fighting Pokemon with super effective damage. And Sky Attack, really fantastic move. And we've seen a lot of really great historical Great League Pokemon, Altaria, Skarmory come to mind that have used Sky Attack to a great potential.
So, quick question from the audience. Cody asks, "Do you think a Charm user is going to become a mandatory slot in freestyle teams with all the insane Dark types coming in Gen 5?"
Oh, 100%. So, Scrafty, I'd like to see I have to take a look at the updated Sims. Like, does get a little, like, it does get quite a bit nerfed, actually, to be
Because
honest,
of
because
Power Up
of Power
Punch.
Up
Yep.
Punch, right? Power Up Punch, what made it absolutely amazing. Now it's going to be pretty good. And, Mana Buzz obviously switched from Sky Attack to Aerial Ace, still really good. So I do think like some of the stock of those Pokemon that were supposed to be really great in Gen 5 are a little bit down. But I do think Charm is going to be really important in Open Great League. I don't know if it's going to be mandatory because there's certainly other types that can cover it. But I think I've certainly seen over the last couple weeks, and especially in the off season month, the ability of people to use charm users effectively and like to run the sims and have gotten better. And we're gonna get a really great charm user coming out in Gen 5. And I'm gonna brutalize his name. And Wizmicott. I don't know. Anyways, it's a
So I dropped
grass.
off at Gen 5 from like the mainline games, so
Yeah.
I'm learning the names too. So don't feel bad. I'm gonna butcher
Yeah.
them as well.
So that's a really interesting charm user as well, since it's a grass fairy type. It doesn't like poison moves, obviously
Yeah.
double weak to it. But so I think charm users are going to be really interesting and open greatly, even more so once these Gen 5 Pokemon fully roll out.
So looking at PV Poke, Scrafty's 3. I
Oh,
remember when it
Scrafty's
first popped out, it was
yeah.
1 for a while.
Yes,
Now
yes.
it's 3.
So it does go down just a little bit, but still like a really great Pokemon. Like whenever you have counter, it's always gonna
Yeah.
do you huge favors,
Yep.
right?
Counter is a hell of a move.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into a little bit more of the update. So we covered Bubble Beam. Do you think the Thunder Fang and the Ice Fang, do you think they'll be worth it to use, or?
Oh, not in the cup right now, but in general, I do think Thunderfang makes it really interesting because if you think about, I'm always thinking about like how do these Pokemon perform against meta Pokemon. So if you think about like one of the meta Pokemon is Azumarill. Azumarill probably still beats Steelix, but now you go from like Dragon Tail that was double resisted and basically did no damage to Azumarill, so you had to like rely almost purely on landing that earthquake damage to do anything to Azumarill. To now you have Thunderfang, which is like the same amount of damage that or same like damage per turn as Bite and like a really hard hitting move. It's gonna cause like people obviously people will still it'll still be a favorable matchup for Azumarill, but Azumarill won't be able to just like farm up that matchup and just have to worry about one move. Now has to worry about potentially that Steelix having Thunderfang. Thunderfang on Arcanine is good coverage because like it allows it to hit water types. Arcanine's very squishy and doesn't have great charge moves if I recall.
It does get Wild Charge, doesn't it?
It does get Wild Charge, yeah, and that's fair. But Wild Charge paired with Thunderfang will take quite a while to get to. But certainly Thunderfang Wild Charge might be an interesting moveset. Unfortunately, some of the meta water types have like a subtyping that allows it to resist electric, or like at least make it neutral.
Swampert, yeah.
Swampert or Lantern makes it neutral to electric, but still at least still doing better than fire moves would do necessarily. And then Hippowdon, I have never seen it. I couldn't even tell you what charge moves it has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think some of these Fang attacks are really interesting.
I was surprised that a Pokemon like Luxray didn't get Thunderfang. I figured that would definitely get one.
Yeah, no, certainly. That would have been pretty cool.
So let's get into some of the other. So you mentioned Raichu with Thundershock. We'll get into that when we talk about Sinister Cup.
Talk about general, like I think Thundershock, Spark versus Thundershock.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
You kind of look at that and say like, well, they're pretty similar. Like Spark has like a little bit less energy, but like more damage. But when it comes to like really squishy Pokemon, you want to be able to spam out as many charge moves as possible. So in that trade-off actually helps out Alolan Raichu quite a bit because like it's very rare. Like another Pokemon that does get Spark that I think would do better with Spark than Thundershock is like Probopass. Probopass gets Spark, but it has enough bulk that it actually can like use Spark to like farm down a Pokemon and like faint it down and save the energy for the next Pokemon. Man, Alolan Raichu, if you try to farm down, you can. But your Alolan Raichu is going to take so much damage from the fast move. So unless you have like a really favorable situation where that particular fast move is not doing a ton of damage to you, it's way better to go with the more high energy generation move in order to get off as many. And we see that in the simulations, and we see that in its viability in Sinister Cup. So and plus it has like Grass Knot, which gives it some coverage. Wild Charge is a really great move, and Thunder Punch for some shield baiting, and then Psychic,
Yeah,
buffed up
Psychic too.
Psychic. Oh man, like Alone Raichu is a really nice Pokemon, and as well it makes kind of like having this legacy Raichu. It's still important to have, like it's still a really nice legacy because of that brick bait damage. Allows you to take out like Probopass and Bastiodon, but it makes it a little bit less important, and which I think is always good. Accessibility of good Pokemon is always healthy for the meta.
So something I need to ask: do you think that we mentioned Alolan Sandslash? Do you think Alolan Sandslash and Golduck now will have a chance in future cups?
So Alolan Sandslash has always been like pretty interesting to me, because it has like kind of an interesting. It has like some pretty terrible charge moves.
Yeah, it does.
Like Boulder's not overly energy efficient, but at least does some damage, and then Ice Punch at least allows it to utilize and to be more spammy. Being double weak to fighting is
Bad.
doesn't really help, and I think it's also double weak to fire then, which
Yes, yeah, it is.
which doesn't really help. But that Ice Punch at least allows you to spam, and if you run into a situation where it's just a pure fire type, at least you have some options of like shield baiting better and with Ice Punch and then perhaps getting off that bulldoze. So uh, it improves its stock for sure. We'll see if people do choose to run it in future cups, but right now it's available in Sinister Cup, but its meta is not really that applicable.
And how about Golduck? Do you think Golduck will have finally get its day in
Yeah,
Great League?
Golduck is probably like its stats are okay for Great League, but it's certainly way more viable in Ultra League because it does max out at like 24, 20 or something like that. So as 100% Golduck, I think it's additional moves if you have enough charge TMs to actually get them are really nice coverage and kind of like makes it stand out relative to other water type Pokemon. Especially it has access to confusion. So like if you ever do Ultra League battles, one of like starters in Giratina are basically the Pokemon,
Right.
and one of the best starters in Ultra League is Venusaur. So now with like confusion and you can like potentially well it already had confusion, but confusion and Synchronoise, so you could potentially KO Venusaur when typically that would have been a historically very poor matchup. So Cross Chop is a nice 35 energy move, especially each confusion generates 12 energy, only 3 confusions to get to a Cross Chop and Bubble Beam as a support Pokemon. Support Pokemon are not what they reference as like they reference support Pokemon a lot in this update, but support Pokemon haven't historically been that helpful. Probably the best one historically has been Alolan Muck. Be able to acid spray and then switch out to like a charm user or a confusion user or a bite user has been like a really great strategy in the past. But so hopefully we see that on the attack lowering side, it being useful. So right now it's too early to tell whether or not Golduck will have its day, but we'll see.
I like that it can be good for Ultra League because for my tournaments I generally have the cup and then I'll have a themed Ultra League. So,
nice.
Yeah, that's what I try to do every month, a themed Ultra League. So that might be very helpful in the future. And then now that we have chances to have one ranked Open Master and Open Ultra, I think there's going to be so many different options now for tournaments and stuff.
I love that for sure.
So, final Pokemon that we'll touch upon during this updated segment is Mantine with Bubble Beam. What do you think about that?
So when I first read through this, I was like really excited because I always talked about like if only Mantine, however you say it, got a better water charge move, then it would be amazing. Like it would be. I was actually talking about it getting like dive or something that wasn't available in the game yet, right? Um, Especially since we have waterfall, kind of makes sense that we would have dive, but that's another story. Bubble beam is like because it does such low damage, it's like more of the shield bait potential, and it's like a little bit tough to take away one of its charge move slots because typically people have run aerial ace for spamming and to hit super effective against grass, and then they've either run water pulse or ice beam to do a lot of damage. So it's kind of hard to give up that slot. I don't know if it's like a huge upgrade for Mantine, but it's at least another addition to its pool.
All right. Okay. So finally, I would say the last big thing is in this update is potentially the end of undertapping.
Yes, which I we referenced at the beginning, saying like that's probably going to be the biggest difference for the most competitive players because we've seen um, amongst the very best battlers. We've seen on stream and a number of different people's videos, like matches are won or lost, and one of the big differentiators between a really great player and and the rest is the ability to under tap, which is why one of the reasons why they're probably taking it out because it is though I enjoy it, like I love like when you're like, okay, I just need to under tap this move, and you
Right.
you stop and then you see them do their fast move, and then you hit the charge move, and you're like, oh, I just won because of that successful under tap. And that kind of forced me even more so to know my counts and how many fast moves it takes to get to a charge move, and finding a way to win, and taking away that importance of charge move priority. But it was a very like weird mechanic. Like, why am I? Whenever you have to, whenever the way to win a game is to stop playing the game,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a weird thing to mechanically to think about it from a gameplay perspective. But it was a lot of fun to. It's still in the game right now. It'll eventually go away once the next update is enforced. But for right now, it's still there. You can still under tap, but once it goes away, we're gonna see how Niantic actually fix the issue, and there might be another potential exploit that gets available. So, and a lot of the competitive players were kind of upset about it and saying that's taking away one critical strategy from it. But I think the best players always find a way to differentiate themselves. So I think they relied previously on a lot on piggybacking, and then once piggybacking was
Yeah.
effectively removed, a lot of them turned to under tapping. So once under tapping gets removed, I'm sure people will find the next thing to differentiate themselves from the rest of the competitors.
So when do you think we'll see it'll be gone?
Oh, once the next update's
Okay.
enforced. Yeah, yeah. So whenever that is, because they said like over the next couple weeks. I'm sure they I'm not sure that they're doing out of courtesy for the community instead of like it just going away. Because like when piggybacking was removed, like all of a sudden people were like doing tournaments and they're like, oh, I tried to piggyback but it wasn't working, King. Like what happened, right? And then I had to do a whole video proving that it went away, and they fixed the mechanic. If you tried to piggyback, they basically retroactively applied the damage and gave you the energy. So it's like a really interesting fix. This one they kind of gave courtesy to people that hey, we're gonna be doing this, so expect it once this next update's enforced.
Well, that's good because I definitely learned the hard way with piggybacking. So when
Yeah,
I had a jungle cup like the day after, and I
yeah,
kept trying with it was a Vigoroth versus Vigoroth battle, and I got smoked
yeah,
because I just kept
yeah.
waiting.
You're like relying on this piggyback. Yes, they did the charge move first. Now I'm gonna piggyback, get a turn ahead. Then all of a sudden, like you're like, what happened here? Like that's like my whole strategy was relying on winning that lead matchup and all this stuff. But
Yep.
people will find a way. So we'll at least have a little bit more heads up. And it's actually really interesting that they acknowledge that. That's something that they haven't historically acknowledged
Right.
in the game, right? Like there's been a number of different exploits and glitches in the game that people have taken advantage, like bubbling a gym previously, or even in raids when you're doing raid challenges, like skipping the lobby trick and all these things that they haven't historically acknowledged. And it's interesting for PvP that they're acknowledging. They don't call out under tap, but they effectively are. So
I'm glad that it seems that they're getting more open to the kind of PvP tournaments that we're having and the Silph Arena and all that stuff. So
yeah, well, for sure the Niantic developers and Niantic and Pokemon Company are watching what's happening. Whether or not they officially acknowledge it, they definitely know what's happening, and they're definitely in the subreddits and reading Twitter, and they know what we're thinking, and I'm glad that they're engaging. So
and we'll definitely get into that more towards the end of the show when we
absolutely,
talk about the future of PvP, because
absolutely,
yeah, they definitely need to work together. So I know that the data mine for the newest update that's coming up is already like out. They're already kind of like tossing things out. We're getting a new loading screen coming up. It's
yes,
heavily Team Rocket themed.
yes.
Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I don't know. I'm not trying to get too hyped up about it
Yeah.
just yet, just because I do like the concept of Team Rocket, and it was like fun the first like couple days going
Sure.
out there and battling and all this stuff. But then it kind of like just became like, oh, use 3 SmackDown T-Tars or use 2 SmackDown
Right.
T-Tars in a Dialga, and you're able to beat almost anything. And then when they did the New York Takeover, that was cool marketing. And then when they had that hour, that Team Rocket hour, it's kind of fun. I went out there and
I did
walked
too.
and did like 35 of them, and it was kind of fun to just kind of like speed through it. And I saw a lot of people out there, but it's kind of like simmered down in terms of what's happened. So I kind of want to lower my expectations, but I would love if Giovanni came out and like took over the gyms or did something cool. And for me, for this is just for my selfish reasons. I want it to be. I want there an option to be for something really challenging,
Me
something
too.
where you have to like be like technically and mechanically perfect. Like
I
you
would
have to
love
like
that.
understand move sets, counts, like shield bait, switch, like just find a way. Like saying like there's only out of like the million ways that you can play out this Giovanni on very hard. There's only 3 ways to win, and the community has to come together to try to figure that out. That's personally what I want out of Team Rocket, and um, what I want out of these NPCs. But it'll be really exciting. Like people will always be really excited when new shadow Pokemon come out, and people will want like Shadow Lugia, and it looks really cool. Um, so I think it'll be exciting, whatever they do. But I'm trying to like temper the expectations from what I think will happen.
Sure, because we have really truly no idea what is going to happen.
Yeah,
But from looking at this loading screen, I am getting hyped because it does look like they're at a gym. It looks like maybe we're gonna have those images that they've been showing from Professor Willow's secret file. It looks
yeah.
like they may be like Team Rocket leaders type deal.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
they're like
no,
the reverse of our like team leaders. That's what they
yeah.
kind of look
That'd be
like.
cool. And people were talking about. I'm not sure this is gonna be true, but uh, uh, the option to change to Team Rocket. I think
Oh,
that's that would be really interesting to see how many people
I could
get
see people
on
doing it.
that hype train. So
I
for
could see
sure.
people doing it. And then it looks like they're in a gym, so that'd be kind of cool if maybe you fight Giovanni in a gym or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be very neat.
All right, so let's get on to season 2 of Sylph Arena. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of new rules that they added.
Yes.
Um, what rules do you think are the best, and are there any rules that you don't like that they implemented?
Um. So I think a lot of the rules were just like clarification. So like one is like using external resources. I think it wasn't like fully outlined, and different communities had like different takes on it. So I think that was very good of them to clarify. I think like small things to in the overall big picture. Uh, Things like if you want to be on the leaderboard, then you have to disclose you can't hide your card.
which is I think is fair.
Yeah, which I think is very fair, and hopefully remove like, you know, some people I'm sure did it for whatever reason they don't want their Pokemon to be seen, right? So that way, like for example, if I'm like the number 2 player in my local community and the number 1 player is like played in another tournament, like I can kind of see what
His
team they're
team,
running
yeah.
and all this stuff, right? So I get like some of those are like legitimate reasons, and then obviously some people are messing around the system, but I do think that's like probably smaller than what people think because I hear it all the time. They're like, "Oh, King, you know, there's some players at the top that are like kind of gaming the system, like racking up their wins, boosting up their thing." I'm like, sure, I definitely acknowledge that there's going to be some, but I think it's like way less, and hopefully with this additional disclosure, it'll kind of like stop all this like random rumors and all this stuff. So I think that was really good. I think the biggest one for me personally is like recording the record of your battle, because I think it's like acknowledging that, for example, if I like 2-0 somebody, it's different than when I go 2-1, and hopefully adding that additional data will allow people to differentiate each other, because it's very difficult. Like, how do I, if I'm like, you know, if we each do 100 ranked battles in our local community and I go 85 and 15 and you go 85 and 15, like who's higher,
Right.
right? So now they have some like additional data, which I think will allow people to allow them to better rank players, which I think is really good. Obviously, the controversy, or the minor controversy, was like forcing people to go to 3 games.
Right.
Um, so I think that's interesting. I think a lot of people are concerned because that might make tournaments run longer.
I
Because
think it definitely will a little bit, but I don't think it'll be too crazy.
it'd be too, and you know, I think we'll see. They have the data, so my suggestion to them was like, hey, let's see in the first month how long each round takes, because they
Right.
have historically data from the past to say like, okay, average round took 20 minutes. Now that we made it, you know, through three mandatory 3 matches, maybe it goes to like 21 minutes, and people aren't that fussed about it. But if it goes to 30 minutes, then hey, like we might have an issue, and that's something
Right.
that they need to take a look at. So I'm always like a big proponent on like, let the data do the talking. It's a
I
business
feel you.
analytics professional. That's a always a good motto from my perspective. And then I think the other concern is like, imagine like I get like, I'll give you an example. Like when I faced House Stark, like one of the great American
Sure. Yeah,
players
he's up there.
in Philadelphia, he just brutalized me in the
Oh
second
no.
thing, and like he beat me with like 2 Pokemon left and 2 shields left, right? In
Oof.
our first matchup, right? Like, and you know, I don't want to get beat down a third time, right? So like that's also a concern, is like how do um like inferior, like, you know, not as experienced players, um they don't want to go to the tournaments and just get like beaten up
Destroyed.
for
Right.
3-0, right? And the kind of ruins of morale. And they've kind of fixed that by like having the like we call it the forfeit option, or
Yeah,
like
the option to
you
be
can,
like, "Hey, I'm all set. Like, you beat
yeah,
me
yeah, we're
already."
good. 2-0, count as 3-0. Like, we don't need to play out this matchup because we already know what the result is going to be. So I think that's an interesting compromise. And you know, I think as long as the Silpharina, you know, markets that and sell the idea that rankings are going to be better if we go to 3 games as opposed to just going to 2-1, or like just going 2-0, for
Right.
example.
I think they
And
will
if
help because some of
it
those
will,
tiebreakers were whack sometimes.
yeah, exactly. So I think that will certainly be helpful, and but we'll see as they go along. And we've seen that Silverina has been willing to adapt the rules, right? You know, you work with some organizations and they have like this strict set of rules,
Yeah,
and
they
saying like,
dropped the book on you.
yeah, and they say like, here's the rules, deal with it, right? If you want to play our game, deal with it. But for the Silpharina, we saw after the first month, I made like a big fuss, and I'm sure many other people too, around like bringing duplicates, like kind of ruined the creativity of PvP in some of these tournaments. And then the next month they said no more duplicate species, which I think they're flexible and really great, and you know, any number of positive adjectives to describe Silverina. So
Right. And I like the fact that they kind of clarified that 2-0 is basically the same as 3-0. You know, it's
yeah,
not like an extra like some people are like, "Oh, I'm going to be 3-0 now." So, but it's basically the same as if you just get a normal loss in the season 1. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think as long as it improves ranking, I'm always up for it, right? Because especially early on in the season, the more data you can get, the better the rankings are going to be, and the reflection of people's skills. So um, I think the updates overall were good, and they clarified a lot of things, and certainly a big improvement. So I think they did a really good job.
Now, is there anything that you feel that? Well, hold on. First, let me ask you this: how do you feel about bluffing?
So like when someone doesn't have a Pokemon but they put it
Yeah,
in,
since they kind of
um,
made it like a rule that you can technically do it, but you can't have a Pokemon in that spot, basically.
yeah, I personally I have no problem with it, because it's not like you're actually using that Pokemon or another Pokemon, um, and I think it just gives like a little bit of um, competitive like rebalancing, especially to people that typically do that are people that are pretty new to tournaments, right? Um, and yeah, pretty new to tournaments. So I think if that's one way that they feel more comfortable in participating in tournaments, saying like, "Hey, I don't have a Bastiodon," I'm like, well, just pretend that you do, and then hopefully that will deter, and you can kind of build around that and have that bench pressure. So I personally have no problem with it, and I'm sure that some people have issues with it, but at the end of the day, you're ultimately giving up a spot that you normally wouldn't have, and we haven't seen quite a Pokemon um, that's been really OP that a lot of competitive players haven't been able to get to. Like obviously Bastion was expensive, but and like pretty meta relevant, but like people found a way to get to it. Like if for example, and I'm gonna brutalize his name, uh, Zazelis, or it's like some German name, right? The second form of Dino.
Yes.
This really great Pokemon. Like if that was allowed in a cup and like it was the number one Pokemon, and people were able to bluff that one, yeah, sure. I could see some people having an issue with it just because it's like a really rare hatch right now.
Yeah, it's
But
a monster too.
yeah,
I
it's great. It's
I
great.
I fought somebody in the battle park with it, and he just owned me. He just
yeah,
ruined. He was like, "I want
yeah,
to try some new Pokemon, but I want to go in blind." I was like, "All right." So I brought in like my best guys, and I got brutalized. Like he
yeah,
destroyed
yeah.
me.
The Dragon Breath, Body
Oh,
Slam, Dark
gross.
Pulse is just disgusting.
It's so good,
Yeah.
and it's so fast. Like you don't think it's gonna charge up as fast as it does, because Dragon Breath doesn't usually. It charges up okay, but
It's
this.
like an average, like
Yeah, but
exact.
this is unreal. It's so crazy. And he also had a Pharaoh Thorn as well.
Oh no!
So it was just like a
So you had
trouncing.
no idea what moves it had, right?
Yeah, just I got destroyed.
No, yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that.
So is there any rules that you think that they should have added that they didn't?
Oh man,
Like if you were a
personally,
big member in Sylph and you could make any rule, what would you have put in this second season?
personally, I would like a revision on the technical glitches replay rule.
Okay,
So like right now is no matter what, you replay them at like you have the same lead, same three Pokemon.
agreed.
So like for example, I just did a scrim against Richie, one of the top UK players, and I was clearly my team composition was inferior to his. Like how we had lined up, I had to switch out, and my Poliwrath, he didn't realize he had Hydro Pump. So this particular variant on Poliwrath. So I landed an unshielded Hydro Pump,
Oof.
right? Caught him by surprise, right? And then he knew I had Hydro Pump. So when he brought his little Marowak, I baited him with um, a power up punch. So like, um, but now when we were almost done the match, we actually like it stalled out
Oh
and like
no.
lagged out, and then we're gonna restart, but then the game was like way too laggy today, so we decided not to play it. But in that situation,
There's
like
no chance you're hitting that hydro pump again,
there's no
probably.
way. There's no way I'm hitting that Hydro Pump again. There's no way I'm gonna hit the
Oh,
Hydro
that's
Pump and the Shield Bait again.
yeah,
Because
that's
now he
rough.
now he uses that moveset, right? So I could see for me, I would have like I saw a number of different variations. The simplest variation is like for me, if you see more than one Pokemon, um, and you glitch out, like you some reason to merit to restart the match, I think you can pick a fresh three. I've seen other suggestions. One by Hydro. He posted on Reddit previously, and said something to the effect of like, if you see like if when you rematch, or I'm not sure if he had the clause of like if you see two Pokemon, you only have to start with the same lead. So that way, the person that if so say someone won the lead, which is like a pretty important part
Right.
of the it's not everything, but it certainly helps you win the match. But you can the other two Pokemon slots can be open.
I think that's how
To
it should be, kinda.
Yeah, just because like once you see all three, or there's some instances where um, you see all three of their Pokemon, and they only see two of yours,
Right.
which is like a big strategic advantage, right? Because then you can say like, does like switching in my third Pokemon they haven't seen have a favorable matchup against their last two, and then it's just a safer switch, for example. So um, certainly it's there are considerations. That's one rule that I would have like to see to happen.
And do you think that eventually we'll get that rule?
Uh, we'll see. They had a very heated debate on within the self leadership regarding that rule, and ultimately they stuck with what they have. So I personally am in favor, but I can also understand and live with
Sure.
the current rule.
But with the current rule, you got to kind of go on, I guess, a little bit of morality, a little bit. Because say it was in that situation where you only saw two of the Pokemon and you didn't see their third, but their third was weak against your Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like they were done. Like their last Pokemon wasn't going to help them, but they switched it out to be, to the weakness of one of your Pokemon.
Yeah,
You know
for
what I
sure.
mean? So you'd have to go with
both
them
both
telling
players
the
can
truth.
adapt, right? There's certainly I don't want to say it's like honor system, right? Because like there's no rules to enforce it, and there's not really like a big discussion on it. For me, it's like I recognize that my opponent can do any sorts of moves that they want, but I've certainly been in a number of situations where we just like almost play out exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like against Rishi, like we literally played it almost the exact like almost turn by turn when we switched and when we did charge moves and all this stuff and the series of baiting, but you certainly don't have to.
Because I know there was a big debate in my bracket in the Battle Park where if you have a lead and say you see, like, say we're battling, you see my lead, but I don't see your lead. Like, is it like the right thing to do to be like, hey, I saw your lead. Did you see mine? Should,
Yeah, I think you should always say it,
I agree.
but ultimately, like, you have enough time when you see the countdown to see their Pokemon,
Right.
right? You know what I mean? It's not like all of a sudden you're starting battling, right? Like I can almost switch turn zero, regardless if I know their lead or not, right? Like there's certainly enough time to process it. So
That's true. Absolutely. All right. So I think we kind of hit all the rules that we wanted to hit and everything like that. So let's get into the first cup of season 2, the Sinister Cup. I'm really excited for it. I think it's up there for one of the most interesting cups, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I actually, when I first looked at it, I actually didn't think it was that interesting. Like when I first looked at it, I'm like, okay, interesting. Ghosts are like largely unchecked, but it seemed like okay, people were talking about Steelix, Polyrath, Alolan Marowak, like kind of like um, that they call it SAP core, right?
Yeah.
People they always want to have like creative acronyms, but we certainly seen like a lot of different Pokemon come to the forefront that have been really interesting. So it's certainly way up there in my books after doing a bunch of research and practicing and scrimming against, and it kind of gave the thing is like it was the cup that was designed to uh, have Ghost be the highlight of it, right? The Sinister Cup, right?
Yeah.
It's in October, right? But the funny thing is like Ghosts have kind of like fallen into the back, like relative to like Steelix, for example, being so good, or Polyrath being so good, or Mawile with Power Up
Or
Punch,
even Empoleon now.
Empoleon, right? So now we're talking about there's like some teams where people are like, I remember when Sister Cup first came out, people were like, oh man, I might run 3 ghosts on my team and have like lines of 3 of just all ghost Pokemon. Now people are talking about like maybe I'll just have number of people ask me like, what do you think of just running one ghost, King? Or what do you think of like of not running a ghost at all? So it's kind of funny how like the meta shakes out and things normalize, and I'm sure as the month goes on, people opinions will ebb and flow on certain Pokemon, but it's certainly a cup that's interesting in terms of its move sets and the Pokemon that you're going to be using. Like Psychic, there's so many good Psychic
Yeah.
Pokemon, and that was like considered like one of the weaker types. Loses to Ghost and loses to the Steel tanks, which are kind of staple in it. But now you have like you could run Cresselia, you could run Bronzong, or you could run Faint Attack or Confusion, or are you gonna run Claydol? And now Claydol has like the boosted Psychic, or you're gonna run Lugia so you can hit that Hydro Pump. Like I think there's a lot of Pokemon that are definitely viable in this cup, and I'm really digging the cup so far.
So, where would you rate it among like the best cups?
Ooh, okay.
What was your favorite cup in season 1? And where would you rate it to that?
Before Mirror Cup, my favorite cup was Twilight.
Okay.
And then after it for me, I kind of got Twilight fatigue because like I travel a lot in August. Like I was like in Pittsburgh, I was in Philadelphia, I was in Washington D.C., I was in Seattle, and everywhere people were like, let's do a big tournament of Twilight. I think I did like I don't know, like 24 rounds of Twilight,
Wow.
right? So it was like just like way too much Twilight for me. But I do think it's one of the best cups, and I think another cup that I think was really good and balanced, had a lot of really interesting Pokemon was Rainbow. Rainbow was like had a lot of like I tied for first at the beginning of the month, and then I won a tournament at the end, and like I think I only had like 2 Pokemon that overlapped, and like so like a lot of different strategies and Pokemon came to the forefront, and the Gen 1 2, I think it's Gen 1 2.
Yeah, Gen 1 2
was I think a really really nice touch, and it really highlighted like for example like made Quagsire really good because you couldn't use the other Mud Boys. So and it became like a really interesting Pokemon. You can talk about like, do you run Acid Spray or do you run the conventional Edge Quake? Or I think it was like a really really nice cup. And both those cups are both cups where Azumarill was available but not mandatory. It certainly was a really strong pick.
Yep.
And I think that's a sign of a really healthy meta, like a Pokemon that's historically a terror in Great League, and you said like whenever it's available you're going to use it. It became like it's nice to use, and it certainly has some matchups. But there's certainly it wouldn't be that crazy to run a team without it. Unlike regionals, if you try to run regionals without a Azumarill, like
it was tough.
You're giving up like a pretty meta Pokemon, right? You're giving up arguably back when regionals first came out, arguably the best Pokemon in regionals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree. My favorite was Twilight. I loved Twilight. I was a big fan of it. We brought it back when we did our Mirror Cup. Big fan. In our last Twilight and Mirror Cup was the parity in it was so crazy. Like everybody was like 2 and 2, but one person.
Yeah,
it was awesome. Like how good it was.
For sure. And there's a lot of, and it was the first real true showcase of like that effective charm user could like run wild on a team.
Yeah.
Like you could lose like all 3 of your Pokemon to a charm user. Unlike Jungle where Wigglytuff was good, but you had to be like in the right situation and very skilled to make it work.
Yeah, there was a lot of grass and bug Pokemon that could do some damage. So what would you say was the cup that you liked the least in season 1?
Well, I think when it first came out was Boulder. Like I think Boulder after regionals was probably the 3rd most popular cup run, but the only reason why it was so popular is that so few people were doing Silph Arena tournaments relative to how many people are doing now. So it was just like an opportunity to do it. So I think Boulder, Nightmare, and Kingdom were like kind of at the bottom of the list for me. Like too many Pokemon that were like absolutely mandatory you had to have, or like you could for Boulder you could just have a team of Medicham, Skarmory, and Swampert.
Yeah.
All right. And back when Boulder first came out, it was like you just have a team of like 2 Skarmories and a Medicham, and then that's pretty much all you need, right? It was very It's a very unbalanced cup. Kingdom for me, um, even though it has my name in it, like it was one of my uh, lesser favorites. Even though I did like pretty well in Kingdom, was because like there was the ball core, Bastodon,
Yeah, and
Altaria,
if you didn't
Lucario,
have them,
Lapras.
you were kind of screwed.
Yeah, like you could get away with like not having one of them, but it's like very hard to get away with like not having two of them. So, um, for me, like having four of the six slots locked up is like a little too much for me. So, and then Nightmare was like way too rock paper scissors, and there certainly came some novel strategies that came out of Nightmare. Like I think it's the first time I really saw like doubling up of a type, and then like going for like double fighter and stacking one of the fighters so your last fighter Pokemon could like run through an entire team, or double dark for example. But it was like largely rock paper scissors, which
Yeah,
and like very little like little comeback play.
Nightmare
And
was tough. I made it to the championship in my Nightmare tournament, and if I did do that kind of like unconventional, adding like two darks to my team of three because I had two darks in my team, but I
yeah,
went the conventional, psychic dark fighter,
yeah,
and I ended up losing at the end to a Hypno with my Toxicroak. So it was
yeah.
just
It's like you have like no counterplay against
yeah.
it,
But
right?
if I went the unconventional way, I might have won.
Yeah, exactly. So like that was like only the you still learn something out of these cups that maybe like not that well designed or balanced. So and I like how they've adapted and they included bands and I actually like the I like the Skarmory band for sure because I think Skarmory is like I really like it as a Pokemon. I like using it, but like way overused.
Yeah.
So it's good to get like some few other Pokemon some highlights.
When we had Holly on the show, we were talking about it, and I was like asking her what she thought the tournament would be, and she said that she felt Steel would be in it, and I said, what I was hoping for is we'd get a lot of bans because,
Yeah,
and I loved that there was because like Dark would just run crazy if
yeah,
they let Dark
Sable,
in
yeah,
here, so I was
Sable.
glad there was no Darks. I'm so sick of Skarmory, so I'm happy that Skarmory's out, and I was thinking about it today, like Hypno would have been disgusting. It would
Yeah,
have been so good with, you know,
with Focus Blast
Focus
for
Blast and
the
Shadow Ball,
tangs,
yeah.
Shadow Ball, yeah,
Or
Shadow
even
Ball
if you
could,
wanted to give it one of the punches.
yeah, it certainly would make it really really unpredictable. So I could totally see why they banned it.
So let's get into the core of Sinister Cup. So
Sure.
we'll go through each type, and
Mhm.
we can kind of, make you can give us your who you like, your picks, and I'll let you know currently what I'm thinking about my team,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
we can
absolutely.
go into that. So we got Ghost first. Uh,
So I think the number one ghost is Dusclops. No, a Alolan Marowak. A Alolan Marowak. But
yeah,
you're kind of a fire spin Alolan Marowak
that's what I'm running
is
on it, and it's
is
awesome.
probably the number one ghost. But like it's a hard. It's like I treat it more like a fire type, but it is a ghost type, right? Because that fire spin damage allows you to beat one of the other prominent Pokemon, which is Steelix, and like surprisingly, doesn't force you to give up too much of. You think it would make you give up like too much of the matchup against like Poliwrath, for example, but it's like pretty similar matchup against Poliwrath.
Yeah, it's just like
Whether
a
you're
couple
running
HP, I think.
yeah Hex or Fire Spin. So and then you're a little bit behind on Ghost, but Ghost like for Alolan Marowak, it was always about landing that Shadow Ball,
Right,
like landing
exactly.
the bait, right? Yes, if you do end up in a close situation and you end up with a Drift Blim versus a Alolan Marowak, yeah, you would lose because they would get to Shadow Ball one turn earlier. But like those situations were like pretty far and few, like very rare to ever occur, right? That you would want your Alolan Marowak shields down, like you have no shields for it. So I think Alolan Marowak and Dusclops, and then Dusclops is, in my opinion, like the best Ghost Pokemon.
Wow.
I think there's a lot of other fun ones like Drifblim, Dusclops because it's so bulky. It's like
Right.
a really bulky Ghost Pokemon.
And it's got Fire Punch and Shadow Punch.
Yeah, exactly. That Fire Punch, and depends on which variant you want to run. Like if you run the Fame Tag variant, it allows you to beat Steelix in I think the 1 and 2 shield matchup. But then it like makes you lose the Poliwrath matchup. So I think there's a lot of like interesting uses for Dusclops, and it's just so tanky. That's one thing. It just can take a hit, unlike some of the other like ghost Pokemon. Like a Haunter
It's
could
toast.
never
Yeah.
could never absorb a crunch,
Nope.
right? It would it
Nope.
would never happen, right?
And those confusions. Mm-mm.
Yeah, exactly. So
Bad time.
Driftblim is interesting, mostly for its ominous wind.
Right. If
Uh,
you get that proc, it's over.
like getting the boost is amazing, right? Like you feel like you're invincible when you're using a
Yeah.
Driftblim with a boost, right? And because its Shadow Ball doesn't quite hit as hard as Haunter, it doesn't have as like positive matchup against Steelix, for example. Haunter can actually beat Steelix in the one shield if it lands that Shadow Punch bait and hits a Shadow Ball. So like that's kind of lacking on the Driftblim side, but it's a nice Pokemon. Banette is like way too glassy.
Yeah, way too glassy.
It doesn't have that Shadow Punch to be able to get off it. And we talked about earlier how important it is for a Pokemon that's very squishy to be able to get off a charge move, or else
Yeah.
like.
And then the other move that it really mostly runs, or I've seen people run, is Thunder.
Yeah,
and it takes so long to get to Thunder that you're probably never going to hit anybody with it.
Yeah, exactly. And like Thunder, you're gonna use only on a couple Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like Poliwrath if you wanted to,
and Polion.
And Polion, that's it. But still, like Shadow Ball hits still super hard. So
you mentioned it earlier. Like people were asking you, like, should I run 3? Should I run 2? Should I run 1? What do you think? Because on my team, I'm running 2 currently. I'm not. I haven't like set it down yet because I got my tournaments are the 13th and the 19th. Yep. So right now I'm running Alolan Marowak and Driftblim.
I think those are great picks. I think Alolan Marowak will be on most people's teams. I am debating whether or not I want to run it. I'm trying to run a team without it, but it certainly has like a ton of good It just has so many good matchups. That's the thing. Like it's really hard not to have it. It's like really flexible pick. You're like, oh, like what should I lead with? Why not Alolan Marowak? It has so many positive matchups, right? Or like even like its losses are not that bad. So I think most people will run 2 gross. It will be Alolan Marowak plus another one.
Yeah, that's what I think. You almost need 2. You need like that Hex user or that Feint Attack user, and then you need Marowak having that Fire Spin, because Fire Spin's just so gross. Like that the update really hooked up Marowak for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely made it a much better Pokemon.
So definitely, we agree on. I think 2 ghosts are a must. I think you have to have. No, you don't necessarily have to, but I would say 2 is probably your best bet.
Yeah, I think 2 is the conventional strategy. I think the one that most people will go with.
So let's go to the confusion users. Who is your favorite confusion user? And do you think it's mandatory to have a confusion user on the team? Do you have to have one?
So I'm gonna have a confusion user or a psychic user on my team. I don't think it's mandatory. You can certainly get away with it, but I think like the confused psychic Pokemon are really interesting to me in this cup, because like if you run, for example, Claydol, then you can beat Bastiodon.
Right.
In certain shield matchups, right, which I think is really nice. And if you choose to go all in on the ground moves and you go double ground, Earth Power Earthquake, you can actually beat Steelix. So like you're talking about like one of the like the Steel tanks are designed to beat the Psychic Pokemon too, right? So I think that Claydol is really interesting. I think Bronzong, either with Confusion or Feint Attack, is really interesting. And Bronzong has like a very good moveset in Psyshock and Bulldoze, which I think provides it a lot of. Its Steel typing hurts and helps it in some matchups. And then I think like Lugia is really nice. Landing that Hydro Pump on a Steelix or on a Bastiodon is really nice, and it has so much bulk, and it charges up pretty well with Extra Sensory. And then hitting like the really nice Sky Attack does a lot of neutral damage to fellow Psychic types. But one of my favorites is Cresselia. I just like Cresselia because it's just so tanky, right?
If I had one in Great League, I would definitely run it.
Oh man, like you just like, oh, this Steelix is gonna crunch, no problem. Another crunch, no problem, right? Unfortunately, it has only okay charge moves.
Yeah.
and then Confusion's always a really deadly pick. So
Now with
uh,
Cresselia, is there potential to run Psycho Cut?
um, yes, certainly you can run Psychokai. I think it does. It doesn't with Confusion. I can't remember the matchups off the top of my head, but it does allow you to win some one shield matchups
Right.
that you against go. No, zero shield matchups against some ghost. So like I think against like Drift Blimp, for example, I think you win the zero shield matchup in some other ones, but you don't do the same thing if you have Psycho Cut. But Psycho Cut, certainly allows you to spam up the moves really quickly. But I think Confusion is the right answer. And I think one of the matchups that if you have Psycho Cut that you might not run into because it's not going to be that popular, you actually lose the matchup to Haunter
Oh wow.
if you don't have
Confusion.
confusions because those Psycho
Wow.
Cuts are not doing very much damage.
Okay. So if you don't have a Cresselia and you don't have a Lugia, because obviously you got to trade to
Yeah,
get them,
sure.
who would you say is a good? Who would you pick to be your Confusion user if you couldn't get one of the legendaries?
I think Bronzon. Bronzon's a really nice pick.
That's who I have on my team right now.
Or like another one, like I did this whole video on like confusion users, and it's still pretty relevant. Some of the things have changed, but like they act so differently. Like Cresselia is probably the truest psychic type, and then the least truest psychic type is probably well, like both Bronzon and with Power Punch nerf, it makes Bronzon a lot better
Right.
because like it used to have very iffy matchups against fighting types, right? Which
Because
is
they
one of
would
the
just
reasons
get
why you have
killed.
it,
Yeah.
right? So iffy, right? Like, but now with Power Punch nerf, unless people are choosing to run Dynamic Punch, you're like, you're actually not that scared when you see a fighting type.
Yeah.
So it certainly helps the case. But another one that I think people shouldn't sleep on is Gallade. Like Gallade with it still has confusion, will allow you to beat Poliwrath and Medicham, and then has access to Leaf Blade to hit neutral to a lot of the uh, hit super effective as Claydol, then it's resisted by Bronzon and neutral to Cresselia, and then that close combat will allow you to flip some matchups. It's the only psychic Pokemon that well, I guess unless you have double ground Claydol, that has like consistent matchups, even energy, even health against both Bastodon and Steelix.
But shouldn't Leaf Blade give a good hit to Claydol?
Oh yeah. It'll deal super effective damage. So that's certainly one where it's actually beneficial to have Leaf Blade. It's not just there for shield bait.
Claydol has definitely been giving me fits in my practice battles.
Well,
It,
Claydol beats Bronzon, right?
yeah, it's
Pretty convincingly.
it's
So
been very tough for me to kind of combat it. Where I wasn't gonna run an Empoleon, and then I just powered one up because I was like, I might need it because this Claydol is just giving me
yeah,
fits.
Empoleon is but like a couple other psychic Pokemon that I think people should consider is Gardevoir.
Okay, with
It's not
charm
used
or confusion.
with Charm.
Okay,
With Charm, playing it to its strengths. Like with Charm, unless you're running, I think it's like um, it beats Driftbloom, and it beats like some other like Pokemon. It beats like Cresselia, for example, in like the one shield matchup or that kind of stuff. That Charm damage just chunks away at people, and then building up to Shadow Ball or Synchronoise is like are really pretty hard hitting moves. Another one that's off meta that if people can find a way to use it, it kind of beats that Sap Core is Slowbro.
oh, okay,
Slowbro is really interesting because like you could choose to run Water Gun or Confusion. Water Gun gives you like a little bit better matchup. I'm not sure if you win it, but at least disrupts the core. But Water Gun allows you to hit super effective against Steelix and
right.
Alolan Marowak, and Poliwrath has no play against Slowbro. Um,
Wow.
Hydro Pump's resisted. You know, only I don't only think like unless you run a Mud Shot. That's only like pretty much neutral move against Slowbro and Poliwrath matchup. And then improved Psychic is always nice, and you can
Right.
run Ice Beam or Water Pulse, or depends on what kind of coverage you want to have. So I think that's like it's very squishy.
It's like
So
a
I
nice
don't spend
spice
a lot
pick,
of.
maybe.
It's a spicy pick. A spicy pick that has some play in it.
All right. So you think that you should have a confusion user, but you could get away with it if you truly didn't want to run one.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of like how you would round out your team. You would probably go like triple ghost or
Yeah.
um, something to deter fighting Pokemon. I think you should have one.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm trying to envision a team where you wouldn't have one, but it
At
would
least
be
to
hard to
scare the
control.
fighters away.
Yeah, scare the fighters away and be able to, because like without that super effective damage, like you kind of have like with Poliwrath, it has like very neutral matchups against most of the ghost Pokemon. So it's not like it's kind of like if you switch in too late or the Poliwrath generates too much energy, you end up losing that matchup. Versus like if you switch in Cresselia on a Poliwrath, you're not going to lose.
Right.
Like it's very difficult for you to lose. So
All right. So let's get into the steel types. Now, before we jump into it, to me, the trinity of PvP are you, Zionic, and Battle Hero. So Battle Hero says that having a Steelix with bad IVs is not a good run. What do you think?
is he's certainly looking at some breakpoints in some matchups. But I don't think like IVs like make you.
So you would run one with not a great
I
IV.
would run if it's choice between running a bad IV Steelix or not running a Steelix.
Yep.
I would run a Steelix.
Okay.
Bad
All right.
IV one, right? Like there's certainly some matchups, and I know what he's referring to, but like it's you gotta take these simulators with a grain of salt, right? Because
Sure.
like they're obviously even energy, even health,
Right.
like, no switching in, no tanking moves or shield baiting. Oh, there's shield baiting. Well, there's a number of different considerations, but certainly having better IV ones will certainly be more favorable for you in certain matchups. So. Battle Hero. It was a great video. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But take what everyone says,
Sure.
even from the whole Trinity, with a grain of salt.
Well,
So.
I always trust you, Zionic, and him. So you guys are like the three people that I always go to for everything. And I always kind of take all your info and compile it together and then make my choices. But he had me thinking. I was like, do I run a Bastiodon now? Do I not run Steelix? Like, I was thinking about it.
No. I think Steelix is
The way to go.
the way to go. I think you can have a second Steel type, but man, it would be very hard. It would be like one of those like you're certainly going off the meta and gonna give yourself a harder time without the Steelix, just because that crunch damage, earthquake for other tanks.
Just such a beast.
It's just so good, right? And its tankiness.
Yeah.
And
Takes
then
so much damage.
No double weakness to fighting.
Right.
Helps it out a lot.
So it's a unanimous that Steelix should be on your team. So if you are going to run a second Steel type, what would your pick be?
Oh, I think there's a whole bunch of options that you could run. I think the I don't even know if there's a conventional pick or strategy for this, because like you can run Bastiodon. I think Steelix in Bastiodon is like double Steel strat is really interesting, because like once you draw out their fighter, like you could like conceivably sack one of them. Like for example, you could sack your Steelix and then come in and they bring out their fighter like Poliwrath, for example, and then farm up with your Bronzong or your Cresselia or Lugia or whatever, and then have Bastiodon just sweep. Because like outside the fighting Pokemon, man, these Pokemon don't really have much of a chance against Bastiodon, besides like Claydol, for example. Then obviously you shouldn't run the double tank strategy, because that Claydol will do a lot of damage to Bastiodon. But they don't have a Claydol and they have one fighter. That's certainly a really relevant strategy. I think Empoleon is like its stock improved because fighting Pokemon got weaker, and Fire Whack has gotten more play. So the ability to beat both Steelix and Alolan Marowak is really nice.
Yes. I've really been liking Empoleon. Like, I powered one up recently. It's been what I've been using a lot lately. It helps a lot with Claydol, because I think Claydol has been a nightmare for me, at least.
Absolutely.
And it helps with Steelix, and it helps with Marowak now. I think Empoleon's a really good pick.
It would be even more deadly if it got Hydro Cannon.
Oh.
Now
it would be
talking about actually doing a charge move, or potentially two. if you farm up in the right situation. Like if Empoleon got Hydro Cannon, it's stock. I think it would be almost like the mandatory second steal.
Right.
But it's still a very good option. And then I think one that people are one, if you don't have a counter for it, it will literally chew through your entire team. And we're talking about Bite Mawile.
Oh.
Like
Yep.
like I've been on the receiving end where I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally have no counters to Bite Mawile. Like, once my steel tanks or my fighter went off the board, it like literally chewed through my Dusclops and then chewed through my Cresselia. Like I've even seen plays um, where if it takes both shields, if it uses both shields, it can beat Bastiodon, which not a lot of Pokemon can do. And then it gets double boosted, and then by the time a Cresselia comes in and faints it, it takes 3/4 of Cresselia's health away.
Oh.
Like it's just ridiculous. Like it's certainly still like kind of like I did a video on it and I said like it's kind of like in this like it went from like the 6th to 8th slot to like 5th or 7th slot. It's still really interesting. You can definitely live without it. But man, if someone
Isn't prepared.
doesn't have a check for it,
Yeah.
or your check comes off the board, man, it's just gonna
It's a
devour
bad. Yeah.
people.
It's bad.
And plus, like people are very bad at counting bites. So like if you're not careful as a Poliwrath or as a Medichamp, you might get play roughed.
Yeah.
And then you're lights out.
Yep.
So.
That's toast. All right. So you think that? Do you think that it's almost? No, not. Do you think it's more likely that someone's gonna run 2 steals?
I think it's very likely that people will run 2 steals.
Yeah.
Steelix plus something else.
Yep.
I think running 3 steals is possible, but it leaves you really vulnerable to
A fighter.
to
For
fighters.
Sure, yeah.
Especially someone that runs double fighters, then you're kind of in trouble.
So let's move on to the fighters.
Mhm.
I've been very down on fighters since Pups went down, since it's not been as great. So I've been thinking of not running a fighter. Is that am I stupid for that?
Yeah, you should definitely run a fighter.
Okay.
You 100% should run a fighter, or you're gonna definitely have some trouble where people are gonna bring multiple steel types, and then you won't have a hard check for it.
Okay.
So if you're not gonna run multiple fighters, then you should probably run Claydol.
Okay.
Because then it gives you better matchups against the steel tanks. But yeah, not running a fighter leaves you very vulnerable.
So definitely have one on your team of 6.
Yes.
Okay. So now, with also Power Up Punch going down a little bit, before there was a good amount of fighters that you could pick from, or that could be an option. Now, really, it seems that it's just Medi and Poliwrath.
Yes. Well, I think like if you have it, Cross Chop Primate
Okay.
is really interesting. Just because, but before even like the Power Up Punch nerf, really you probably only really considered Hitmonchan, but like that was kind of like a fringe pick.
Right.
I still think it was still Poliwrath and a Medichamp if you want to run a second fighter. Lucario you could, but man, like when I scrimmed with Lucario and I seen other videos, I just couldn't see it working out. Like in theory, landing that Shadow Ball is really nice.
It's tough.
It's just very squishy.
Yeah.
So squishy. But certainly what I think the update actually brought that made fighters more interesting is like what movesets are you gonna run? So
Right.
like before it was always like Power Punch, Ice Punch, like both on Medicham and Poliwrath. There's like almost no debate. Like with Poliwrath, you could run a Hydro Pump if you want to surprise people. But now people are talking about like, oh, maybe I'll run Dynamic Punch.
Right.
And maybe I'll run, Psycho Cut, Dynamic Punch, Psychic. Maybe I'll run, Mud Shot now again with Dynamic Punch and Hydro Pump. So like now the conversation's like a little bit more lively and you certainly could surprise your opponent a little bit more.
So who are you liking as the fighter? Like, what would you say you're going to go with, or you think you're going with?
I think I'm gonna go double fighter.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Poliwrath, Medichamp.
Okay.
In my lineup, and then I'll take the one that I think fits the team composition better. So like for example, if they have a Lugia, I'm probably more likely to bring Poliwrath mostly because of the movesets I'm running on them, or at least more likely to bring the one that has Ice Punch
Got
to
it.
take care of Lugia.
Now,
Um,
do you think Metacham is better with counter or Psycho Cut?
I think counter is it's really hard to give up counter. And I actually did some matchups where someone gave me like a lineup with like off meta movesets, and I scrimmed against somebody, and without counter, and like they only had one fighter. I don't know why their team was crazy. Like they only had one fighter. It's very difficult to farm down a Pokemon. It's very difficult to farm down Bastiodon. You have to use a charge move to take out Bastiodon if you're using Psycho Cut. There's no way you're Psycho Cutting down a Bastiodon.
Right.
And then versus counter, you can actually take down the Pokemon and then have energy for the next one. So you don't need to burn that energy. So and counter is so good. It's just like very hard to give up. And its energy, it's not like so polar opposite to Psycho Cut. Its energy generation is still not bad. It's still like above average. So I think you're not you're giving up a lot if you do run Psycho Cut, but it's certainly still viable.
Okay. So, say you pick counter, what would you say the two charge moves you should go with?
Oh, I think you should go Psychic.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think psychic.
uh,
I like psychic a lot.
and then it's really up to you. You could run Power Up Punch. Power Up Punch if you want that carry forward damage going forward, right? If you want to like ramp up and boost up against a Steelix or a Bastiodon, Power Punch is really nice. But if you're in the close game situation and you really need to take out this Pokemon, Dynamic Punch is going to be your way to go, right? So depends on how you want to play it. If you think that when you switch in your Medicham that you're going to have shields, then go Power Punch. If you don't think you have shields, then Dynamic Punch might be the answer for you.
All right. Good quality advice.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you are the best. So finally, let's get to the wild cards.
Yes, Girafarig.
That's who you think is the clear wild card pick?
I think it's the clear wild card pick. Um,
Ooh.
I think it's I actually really I just scrimmed with Alolan Raichu. I really liked it too. But Girafarig is certainly going to be the most popular wild card pick because it's such a memeable Pokemon. Reversal definitely helped in the memeability of Girafarig, and I still remember him not having it as part of his decks and like seeing it on the nearby, and people were like, "Oh, Girafarig!" And then when he got it, it was such a big celebration. So I think a lot of people hold Girafarig very near and dear to their heart, and like this is kind of like this is why I never want to say a Pokemon's never going to be good for a cup, because like you think like Girafarig, it has such like poor stat distribution. It had like Psychic beforehand, so like Psychic and Mirror Coat were like jokes of charge moves beforehand, but then they buff Psychic. It's the only Pokemon that resists Ghost damage.
Yeah.
And Confusion hits really hard, and access to Thunderbolt and Psychic is really nice. So I think that is the go-to wild card pick. And then I think after that, you're kind of looking at Alolan Raichu. Alolan Raichu got a really big buff.
And I'm a big fan. I love
with
my Alolan
Thundershock.
Raichu.
It's so spammy. It's incredible. It allows you to beat fighters pretty well. And then I think another sleeper pick that I really like is Probopass. I just posted a video. I went up against three aces. I lost to Arrow 1-2, but it was pretty close. I beat Ramberto, one of the great West Coast players, and then I beat Grimace Poppy, who's a ace rig trainer.
Wow.
And I pretty much used Probopass in all my matchups. And like Probopass does get completely walled by Steelix. It's such a horrible matchup when you go Probopass versus Steelix because you're doing sparks that do nothing and rock slides that do nothing. But man, like if you get lined up with virtually any other Pokemon, you have a really good matchup. Allows you to beat Bastiodon. It allows you to beat Empoleon. It allows you to beat Poliwrath, which I think a lot of people are very surprised by, and it just spams charge moves.
All right. So my final question to you, I'm gonna let you know my team, and you
Sure.
let me know what you think I should if what I should change. So currently,
Mhm.
before I talk to you, I was not running a fighter. I'm gonna change that.
Okay. Now
I
just tell
was-
me your team right now.
Yeah, I was not running a fighter, so that's probably why I was having a lot of trouble that I was having. But I guess the team that I'm gonna plan on using, I'm gonna use Alolan Marowak. I'm gonna use Driploom. I'm gonna use Steelix, and I'm gonna use Bronzong. So those are going to
Okay.
be like my core four, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to throw the fighter in there. I'm going to probably have to throw Metachan in there. And then my last pick is probably either going to be Empoleon or Alolan Raichu. So what do you think I should
Okay,
do?
yeah, yeah. So I think you just gotta look at your team and think about what you're weak to. So like I think like Claydol is a Pokemon that beats a lot of your Pokemon. So
Which has been giving me fits, yeah.
if you bring in Medicham and if you don't have Ice Punch, then Claydol will give your team a lot of fits to Medicham, to Bronzong. Uh, um, it potentially has a winning strategy against Alolan Marowak because that Earth Power could
Yep.
potentially nuke it, and then it beats Steelix. So I think in that case, like your and then obviously Drifblim beats it because like unless they carry Psychic, it doesn't really have much play
Right.
against Drifblim. But so I think Empoleon might be a better fit for your team. Then
Okay.
Alolan Raichu will just give you another weakness to Claydol. That not that I think Claydol is going to be on everyone's team.
But it
Uh,
has been, I've seen it a lot, yeah.
yeah, like if you end up in a situation where you're like, oh, someone has a Claydol on your team, you're like, oh man, I have to really get lucky and land Drifblim on Claydol and hope that the Psychic doesn't KO me. So
All
I
right.
think Empoleon sounds like a better fit on your team.
I'm definitely going to pick not pick, but I'm going to give out a try to Dusclops now. Thanks
Oh,
to you.
Dusclops. People view it as the safest switch in the game.
Wow, okay. I'll
So
definitely try it
like
out. I have a pretty good one, so
in the
I'll give
sense
it a
that it
shot.
doesn't lose super hard to any Pokemon. It certainly has like it has enough bulk to be able to survive a lot of hits, and it has like Shadow Punch, Fire Punch to give you. The only matchup that's really there's a couple of matchups that are terrible for Dusclops is Bastiodon and Probopass. Both of those like you're not doing very much damage to it, but those are kind of like not going to be on everyone's team. So
Right.
when you think about like the core and like the Pokemon that are most relevant, Dusclops is like I've seen people just like as soon as they bad matchup, the instant switch to Dusclops, and then if you invest a shield, you can potentially win the lead and then potentially still win the matchup even though you've lost the lead. And I certainly use it a lot as a safe switch.
Now in the chat they're asking about Blaziken with
Who?
Blaze Kick and Brave Bird.
Oh yeah, so uh Brave Bird.
Yeah.
Oh, for Poliwrath, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you think counter Brave Bird Blaze Kick? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah. That's they
Um,
said there.
man, it's just so squishy.
It
Um,
is super
and
squishy.
Brave Bird's such a bad move. I don't even know. Does Brave Bird? I don't think a Brave Bird would one shot. I'm actually going to check right now. Um, it's certainly you could run it. I just don't think that. I think there are better fighters to consider, but it does have its degree of unpredictability. Brave Bird does 113 of 135, so it certainly does a lot of damage. But you're gonna burn your only one charge move that might potentially get shielded. So it wins the no shields versus Poliwrath and kind of loses everything else.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
those bubbles do like just a little bit too much damage to you because like once you shield the the one Brave Bird, then they can just farm you down with bubble, and then you have like way too much energy. And it's really yeah, it'll beat Steelix, but Steelix can still has the Earthquake to potentially one shot it, and
Right.
even Crunch versus even though it resisted, still does a good decent chunk against Blaziken. But it certainly has some play. But I think there are better fighters out there. Like I think like in some ways like Medicham does a better job than what Blaziken does because still it beats Poliwrath and it still allows you to beat the Steel Tanks.
So without you don't have to give your team away, but give us kind of like the structure. Are you gonna do two ghosts, two steel, and two fighters?
Yeah,
Like what's your structure gonna
I'm
be
probably
like?
gonna do two fighters, uh, two steel, one ghost, one psychic.
Ooh, okay.
All right, and I probably won't bring a lonely Marowak, but I'm gonna test it out still. But I've been liking some of my teams I've been running. I like I tested out one team and it was pretty nice. But I've tested a lot of teams without running a Alolan Marowak in, and they've been going pretty well too.
All right, you've definitely given me a lot of things to think about. So back to the drawing board for me. I'm gonna have to do a
Yeah, well,
lot
I
more
think
battling.
you always just think and consider and
Yeah,
practice and scrim, and I think have people try to break your lineup and see where your potential holes are.
yeah. I'm constantly thinking of what I can do to make better because in season one, the last like 6 or 7 tournaments that I was in, I made it to the championship and lost.
Mm.
So I gotta get better. I gotta do something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll just finish it off, and I'm sure you'll do very well in season 2.
All right, so let's get to the final segment, the final category of what we're going to talk to while you're on
Mhm.
the show. The future of PvP.
Yes.
Um, so I guess this is kind of a big question, but what do you think needs to happen for PvP to become an esport?
So
I
I
know
think
that's right out the bat. That's a big
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah, no, 100%. So I think the easiest path to an esport is if Niantic and Pokemon Company are behind it and see that vision,
Yeah.
right? And believe in that vision to some extent. Um, do I think it's going to be like um, fully like these other like esports where like Riot Games or a number of different things are like investing millions of dollars forming leagues and franchises and all that stuff? I don't think it's going to be to that extent from a Niantic Pokemon Company perspective, but I think there's a lot they can do to drive it. Um, Without it, there's certainly a limitation that can be placed upon it because of being able to draw that strong user base. But I think even without them, there's certainly a lot that can be to grow upon. And I think a lot of it's just continuing to host bigger tournaments. Being bigger on Twitch and bigger streams and these communities coming together and welcoming new players. But I certainly see a lot of movement happening and a lot of new players joining on board. And right now, like for Mirror Cup, I think there was like 35,000 active participants. If that number is 100,000 by the end of season 2, I think that's like a really really positive sign, and certainly will then draw the eyes of like sponsors and holding bigger ticket events and building up stars for players.
I feel that if we ever, if it is ever going to get to that level, if it can get to that level of like a Fortnite or one of those games, which would be tough for sure, but I think that Sylph and Niantic have to team up. They got to work together on it if it's gonna.
Absolutely. I think that would be amazing. We'll see if that will happen.
I'm worried though because when they were originally talking about a couple updates ago, where they were talking about the new route system and they were talking about a new battle system where you had to have like a battle charm and all that. My worry was that they were going to make battling more like raids almost, where you got to have certain you need passes to battle, and then when you run out of passes, you can't battle. And I hope it doesn't turn out that way.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I do recognize that um, at, for Niantic to continually push updates and all this stuff, they have to sell something.
Right? They
You
got
know
to
what I mean?
make money.
They got to make money somehow, right? And it might be enough just to draw the PvP community in, and they realize that they have to go raid to get charge
Well,
TMs or
exactly.
other like interact with the game in other respects or buy star pieces and participate in Stardust events, a lot of stuff. I'm hoping that's enough, but I also understand my realistic world of how they view it is if there are like battle passes, that those battle passes are only good for rewards. So for example, like you might get
Sure.
like three passes and you could enter in a tournament and then you get rewards, but you could still enter into tournaments. You just won't get a reward, but it'll still move up your rank. That's
Okay.
kind of like how I view it. So that way, like people are still, it might be like something really interesting to more casual players. Like some people are saying, like maybe that's the only way to get like shiny Hitmonchan, right?
Okay.
It's like one of the random prizes in like a big tournament that you have to enter. So those that people that are like shiny hunting realize like, oh man, I gotta get into PvP, and like they might not get it on their third try, and like, okay, now I have to buy some battle passes because I'm trying to farm up that particular shiny. Like no different than in raids. But I'm hoping when it comes to the ranking system that there isn't a cost associated or like an incremental cost associated
Right.
with it,
That would kind of
right?
stink.
Yeah, it would certainly.
Something I could see maybe is if you got like a battle pass and say that they let you battle for an hour or two. Like
Mhm,
you have your pass and you have like an hour of battling, so you can
mhm.
go in your tournament and have or 2 hours of battling or something. I think that would be okay, but I think that if it's like legitimately just you have to have passes to battle, it would be pretty stinky.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I just don't see them doing it because I know they have an online system for VGC, the
Yep.
Video Game Championship, and I don't recall it having like this like pay to play for each round
Yeah,
and
it definitely
whatnot. So,
doesn't. So
so I don't think. I don't know what they're gonna do, but
and they
hopefully
quickly
it's not the
kind of like
case.
pulled it back once there was kind of like a little backlash online, and they quickly pulled it back, saying like, "Oh, we're gonna rework it and make it better or whatever."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think all that stuff was data mined,
Yeah,
and then they kind of took it out of the data mine. And but we saw that similar to Quest,
right.
like where people were 2 months before Quest came out, it was data mine, and people were talking about all these things, right? And like throw X number or whatever, and then they took it out, and then 2 months later it was just implemented in the game. So I think they're probably doing something very similar to with his like versus seeker and competitive rank and all that stuff. So I do think a lot of that will help from like encouraging. I think I was actually when people asked me this question like back in April, probably the first time I thought about making Pokemon Go PvP into an esport. People asked me like, what does Niantic need to do? I thought about like, oh, they need to like improve the AR and that kind of stuff. I actually don't think that's needed because I've seen like how exciting the battles are and how engaged people are on the stream. And I remember like after the DC championships, like so many people were like, I saw so many like kind of like half compliment questions where they're like, someone said, I didn't realize a dumbed down version of Pokemon could be so exciting.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
they're like, or like people are like, I don't even I hate PvP, but I couldn't keep my eyes off of it.
Wha-
You know what I mean? Like that made me realize like it is very entertaining when
yeah,
you're watching and you're seeing like really high level gameplay and the strategy and the back and forth and the adjustments that people make and like the East Coast Showdown when they had the professional I'm not sure you saw the stream, but they had like at like a real esports venue and they had like high quality production. It kind of like people, so many people were messaging me after like, man, it made me feel like I was watching ESPN and
yeah,
it was so intense.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like, I think there's like just so much watchability with it.
I
But I
could
think we just need to
yes.
continue pushing forward and stepping on the pedal. And you're seeing it already in season two. We're looking at London, UK. They're gonna have like 300 people participate in a tournament. People flying in from like 12 different countries.
Insane.
We saw in Montreal Safari Zone 219 people
Right.
play in the tournament. Like we're hosting one in Toronto for like 100, and they're also hosting one in New York City the same day. And it's also going to be like around 100 too. So like
Wow.
two very pretty close tournaments on the same day hosting. So I think there's going to be, and hopefully we'll capture the interest of like the Japanese market and more the Asian market, so we can have a championship out there. So I
Yeah.
think there's still so much growth that can happen with or without Niantic right now.
Yes, and it's interesting, like you said, like people are saying like I'm not a big fan of PvP, but watching it, kind of, I was enthralled with it. Like one of my really good friends who runs the Pokemon tournaments with me. He originally was just running them, but he wouldn't battle. He was just like, nah, I'm all set with PvP. And then he saw like a really close match between me and somebody else, and he was like, I want to actually try it. And then like he started playing, and now he loves it, and he plays every tournament now, which is really cool. So, what do you think besides somebody who already loves Pokemon, watching it and maybe getting the itch? What do you think we can do to attract more people? Because I think there's still a large group of people that are more of just like shiny hunters or collectors, and they're like, oh, I'm all set with PvP, but they haven't even tried it yet. Or
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
those
So
guys that want to just get, they'll do their 3 battles to get their dust or get their
yeah, the
TM or
intensive
whatever,
beat
and then
battles.
they're
Yeah, yeah,
out. So what can
yeah,
we
yeah.
do to attract more people to play PvP?
So I always like to make this parallel to Pokemon in general. So like when I talk to my friends that like bought Pokemon Let's Go, right? I asked like maybe like 50 of them, did you actually do any Wi-Fi battles? They said no. The thing is like Pokemon as a game in general, the battling portion is always going to be a minority, right? It's just the reality. Like Pokemon is more about collecting at the end of the day for majority of player bases. But I kind of view it as like there's always going to be like a small circle of like really super competitive players that like are doing sims every day and battling every day. Then there's going to be like casual like tournament goers that people like, okay, I'll go to the tournament if it's after community day, or I'll go to the big one once a month, all that stuff. And then there's going to be and I think we can continually to grow that casual tournament goer circle. Some of them will convert to more competitive ones, and then more people will join that circle. But I think an equally important circle is people that watch, like pay attention to it. They might not participate in it, right? Because they're not into like competitive, or they get anxiety, or for a number of reasons. But like, there's so many people that watch basketball. But if I gave them a basketball and put them on the
They
free throw
probably
line,
wouldn't want to play it.
they could never hit a
Right.
free throw to save their entire life, right? But there's still like that big. So I think it's important for us to continue to grow that casual tournament goer player base, and that people that watch it and support their favorite player, their favorite battler, et cetera, et cetera. And we see all these different movements, and then there will be like a very big population of people that will never touch it, because like it's not like Fortnite, or it's not League of Legends, where
Right.
the main purpose of that game when you buy it is to participate in the competitive aspect of it. So, but I think there's still so many people that play Pokemon Go that hardly know anything about PvP. So I think we can still reach out to them and have them watch it, or have them engage in tournaments.
So a couple of things here. So guys in the chat, start throwing out your questions because we'll ask King eventually. But I'm gonna throw out one right now. Is what do you think of lowering the friendship levels?
I think that would be amazing.
I think it should definitely be like second tier friendship.
Yes, absolutely. The 7 days, I think
Yeah.
that will be really great. I understand their concerns too, because they definitely they don't want to make Pokemon Go just to be at home, and I think that's some of their concerns. Like, just be at home and play Pokemon Go from home. They want it to be on the go, as the name implies. But I kind of sold them an idea like, hey, if you lower friendship, that's going to increase like friendship and engagement, and people will then more likely to go out and participate in these events and community day and all these other aspects of Pokemon Go. So I think certainly lowering friendship would be really amazing.
Yeah, I think that's something that definitely needs to happen. I also think that maybe prizes need to change slightly to
Certainly
attract more people.
The reward aspect of it is really important. I'm probably not as sold on that in terms of like getting the number of people to play. Like, think about the number of people that play Call of Duty.
Right.
Like, they spend 6 hours playing Call of Duty. Do they get like a prize at the end of it?
No, that's true.
No, they don't, right? They just enjoy the gameplay aspect of it, and like watching other people play Call of Duty, right? So I think like prizes are going to be important in the competitive aspect of it, and certainly prizes will help get some people engaged. But whenever there's a prize, people will just find the easiest way to game it, and then we end up like in the situation that we have right now, where people are doing 10 CP battles just to get the dust and the rewards, right? Are they really? Yeah, we can say that we have X millions of battles, but does that actually mean anything?
Right.
Like, improving the gameplay, engaging the community, those things like will come at the forefront, and then the prizes will be kind of like the cherry on top.
So what about something like maybe having a Pokemon encounter for a certain amount of battles, or for a battle?
Yeah, certainly. People can do that. I think like, yeah, I think all like the prizes are always going to be good incentives, and it hopefully will flip people's perspectives on PvP. But if we really want I think it's like more like these like self ambition type things, right? And part of it's like if we had a leaderboard, I think that'd be like more incentive than winning a prize, for example.
Yeah, I think a leaderboard's a must. We need one. An in-game leaderboard would be so cool.
Yeah,
for sure.
and it just the quantification of it and the gamification of it will be way better. Because like if we just have like just do a battle and you have a chance to get a shiny Hitmonchan, for example, then people will just do 10 CB battles all night, and are they really doing PvP at that
Right.
point in time?
Yeah. So, what do you think are some changes that Niantic has to make to kind of make PvP a little bit better or make the overall Pokemon Go game better? I know for me, the main thing that I'm begging them to do is to fix the TM system.
Yeah, for sure. TM system fixing will be really good, and I I understand why they just keep adding moves
Yeah.
and don't make other moves legacy. I think like having legacy moves is not good for the for the competitive scene,
Agreed.
because it creates like too much exclusivity, and then when people are trying to get in, they feel like there's this huge barrier to entry and all this stuff. So, but I think fixing the TM system is really big. For me, I kind of like holding out on suggesting too many things until I see how this versus seeker and competitive
Right.
rank plays out, right? Because like that could be the dream, right? That
Right.
could be like when we go from like 30,000-40,000 competitive PvP people to a million people,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So I'm kind of still waiting on those things to roll out, and that kind of like has me on edge, and that's all I can think about right now is like I'm just waiting for the time when my Twitter feed blows up and said like, oh, they released competitive rank and it's XYZ system, and diving full out into that. So that's kind of like preoccupying majority of my thoughts on how Pokemon Go could improve.
I would definitely love a leaderboard. I think TMs need to change in two ways. I know they're never going to let us pick the move. It's never going to happen. But maybe cycle through all the moves they have.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think they could easily do that, right? And I think like they could even have like a very simple system that it's always going to roll it's in alphabetical order.
Right. Sure.
Right?
That'd be perfect.
There you go, right?
And I would love for them to maybe make it tough to get, but eventually give you like a community day TM. You can only use it in the 3 hours. And
sure, yeah.
You got to do some crazy research to get it, and you have to do it in that 3 hour span as well.
Yeah.
And it lets you get one move from the past.
Yeah, no, I could certainly see that. We'll see what they happen in December. Like if in December they let all community day moves, including 2018, then I'm kind of on board that we probably don't need that one.
Exactly. Yep. You're right.
To the end of the year. So we'll see in December, because they're
giving us 2 days.
Yeah, it's 2 days. Yeah, so we'll see how they roll it out. That was a really nice gift at the end of 2018. Allowed people to really catch up, and they had all the community day spawns.
It was epic,
which were really nice. So
yeah.
Because I certainly would like it, hopefully I would like a better Umbreon and Venusaur and Meganium.
I didn't even think of Last Resort at the time. I was like, oh, screw this. I'm not walking my thing for 10. And now I'm like, oh, I wish I did it. Like I want one so bad.
It's so good.
It's so good. Oh, it's so disgusting. So let's get into some of the questions here, because we're running out of time. Do you care if we go a little late?
Man, I could talk all night about Pokemon Go and PvP.
We'll go a little late because we started a little late. So just wanted to check with you. So, all right, some of the questions we got here. Somebody's Pello says, King, how do you think the VGC and the TCG public sees Pokemon Go PvP? I like to think Go is more balanced, but I'd like to know your opinion. So you kind of have a little bit inside experience because you were at the the tournament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if you looked on Twitch, it was so funny. People were telling me, because I didn't watch the Twitch obviously because I was participating.
You were
but people were telling me at the beginning when Pokemon Go PvP first came out, a whole bunch of people that were in VGC and TGC were like making fun of it, saying it's not a real Pokemon game. And then by the very end, people were like, they're like, oh, I can't believe that happened. How did he know to do that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, these same people were like kind of ridiculing it at the beginning, because there's certainly a lot of Pokemon purists that don't view Pokemon
Of
Go
course, yeah.
as like as a pure Pokemon game, and they feel like Pokemon companies catering too much to Pokemon Go, and some of that is like based in the truth in terms of like they're catering to mobile games, maybe a little bit more than they had in the past. But I think whenever people watch it, they there's a lot of excitement behind it, and I do think Pokemon Go PvP is more balanced than VGC. I
Yeah.
love watching VGC, but sometimes like how many times can you see like the same Pokemon always come in the competitive scene?
Yep. Yes, absolutely. I could not agree
So
more.
I think they've done a really great job in terms of balancing and making certain Pokemon relevant.
So I guess this is the question I want to ask you. During that, the tournament that you went to and you obviously won, um, was there any talk of Sylph? Was Sylph represented in any way? Or was it kind of just
No,
the Pokemon
no,
company was like, we're doing our own thing?
there was no discussion on that.
Okay.
So at least it wasn't brought up.
Okay. One day, I hope they can both get along.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get another one for you. What do you think about dust requirements to make PvP more affordable, dust-wise?
Certainly, I think that would be helpful. I saw a lot of really interesting ideas around like second charge move is always really expensive. I think that's the biggest thing. I think if they made second charge move like candy only, for example, that would certainly go a long way. Um, but I understand they want people to play other aspects of the game. Um, and as much as I really love PvP, I recognize it. I recognize that it's never going to be the absolute main focus of Pokemon Go from Niantic's perspective,
Yeah, it's always going to be
right?
a sub thing because theirs is getting out, meeting people. It's in the name. They want you to get out and go. They want you to
Yeah, yeah, and for myself, like I played the game like super hardcore, like
same.
hardcore than most people could ever dream of, right? Since the game came out, and the style of my gameplay is way different now. I'm certainly engaged in the community probably just as much as I was previously, but it's way different. Like I'm not going out and hanging with my friends, like doing raids and or grinding it like catches and Stardust as I used to. Um, but that gets contrasted by going to tournaments and
Sure.
meeting people there and engaging in that kind of community. And when I meet people, it's like we have like a very common interest and we're talking about it, and
Right.
it's a lot of fun chatting about it. But I also recognize like if they made it so much about PvP, then
They would alienate a lot of people.
yeah, it would alienate a lot of people, and that's not really their goal and their mission. So I think there has to be some sort of balance, lowering the costs, all the stuff like reducing the need to do other aspects of the game is always going to improve the PvP experience. But does it improve the overall Pokemon Go experience?
Sure. Probably not.
Probably not, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
So there has to be a balance. There
I
has to be a
agree.
balance.
And I totally agree that in the beginning, my style's definitely, before it was just me and a couple friends, we'd kind of go out and hang out and just play Pokemon. And now it's to the point where my big interaction with everyone, yeah, I'll go to raids and I'll pop in real quick and I'm like, hey, what's up? And I'll raid real quick if I need to.
Like,
But
oh, I
my
got my
big,
TM. Good.
my big interaction is at the tournaments.
Yes.
Like that's where I'm meeting everybody. That's where, and then if there's a raid, the whole tournament group will run out and go do
Yeah.
the raid real quick. Like,
exactly. So
yeah.
now you traded like these small daily interactions to like a really big interaction at a tournament.
Yep.
So whether or not they view that as good enough for their mission is it's going to be up to them.
So, Pello asks, "Are you coming to Mexico in the future?"
Yes, I am trying to plan a trip. I'm hoping in December, but I'm just like looking at my schedule still and trying to lock up a few things. But I've already looked at some flight options. So
Nice.
certainly Mexico, Monterrey, Mexico City, and I'm gonna brutalize his last name, Guadalajara or something like that.
Guadalajara, yeah.
Are all on my list. So
Nice.
they have a really big scene out there, and I've met a lot of Mexican players. They came. We had like a a raid train and a dinner. And when I was in Montreal, me and my raid partner, Sparkle Tangerine, we hosted one, and certainly there was a lot of like Mexican players there, and they're always very enthusiastic, and they're always like blowing on my Twitter. So I definitely see them, and I'm planning a trip. I just need to finalize a few things.
All right, so there's your answer to that. We have a question from Cody. He says, King, you retweeted Stintfist's video the other day on speed in Pogo, with the main idea being break CMP. What else could speed stat be used for?
Oh, so that the for the audience, the premise of that video is like right now CMP is based off this like kind of weird mechanic of like whoever goes in last, all this stuff, right? Who goes in
Right.
first, right? Kind of like a logical. It's kind of like undertapping. Like, what does this actually have to do with the game, right? Not really. So like, I think the speed stat was like talking about like if two Pokemon get to charge move, whoever has the higher speed will get off the charge move first, and that will only result in a tie where Pokemon are the same species. And if they introduce speed IVs, then obviously the same speed IV, right? But if they introduce a speed IV, then it might make things even interesting because now you could be looking for like the PvP rank 1 and the speed tier 1.
Yeah.
And is the speed tier 1 more important than like ranked one? So it could be really interesting,
Right.
And kind of like blow up the entire system. But
and then like what would happen with like CP? CPs would be all different now if you got
if they
added
they
speed.
might not include it. They might not include it in the CP stat though.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's what they brought up in the video. It's like there's not really a need to include it.
Got it.
If they have it as like another like visual indicator, like in the bar, it like adds another line for speed, or even if they have like tiers of them, right?
I would totally be down for that. I think that'd be the way to
cool, right? Because then you could talk about like right now when we look at Pokemon, we're looking for like okay, product of stat, or do they hit a certain breakpoint?
Right.
I think adding the speed one is like, is speed more important? Well, it only matters in the mirror match, or if you're lined up with like this Pokemon that has pretty similar ones, and it might be pretty interesting. So then, I think that would be kind of cool. Adding it to like, I know there's like ideas floating around like adding speed to like ability to charge up your charge move even quicker. I like that if it can be done correctly.
Right.
But I think it also like create some confusion.
Sure,
it might make it more difficult than it needs to be.
I think
right now breaking CMP would be pretty valuable.
I think it'd be really cool too, because then you'd have like say like someone like Bastiodon. Like they're obviously super slow, but they're really powerful.
Yes.
So you're giving up that going first probably to have that extra power. Or you might have a Pokemon like, say, Azumarill, who everybody loves, but it's kind of a tubby guy. He's probably not going first. Like, does that maybe stop you from using Azumarill in certain situations?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I think it'd be so cool.
This breaking the CMP is like enough of a nerf. Like, if then you add in like energy charging, right now, like besides like really OP fast moves like Charm and Razor Leaf, the game is most of your damage is done from charge moves.
Right.
So like if you give it too much of a buff, then it kind of like nerfs these other Pokemon that have historically been really defensive and created really nice balance in the game previously.
All right, yeah, I would love to see that. Or I'd definitely love to see more theories on it, or more thought on it, because it's definitely something cool to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So my buddy John Davis asks, are there any possibilities for Go to make Mega Evolutions work? I don't. I know in the beginning they said they would probably never do it, but I know that they've changed their mind on a lot of things. How would that work?
Man, certainly you could have Mega Evolutions work, and it might be like, for example, you can only do a Mega Evolution charge move once per game.
Okay.
Right? So it's not so overpowered, but like some potential comeback strategies, right? And then not only do they have to think about what should I shield this charge move or not, but is this charge move going to be a Mega Evolution one, do twice as much damage? Right?
I like that.
For example, I might say like historically, I can tank this charge move regardless of what charge move they have, but if I have an option to Mega Evolution one, then potentially it does more mind games for shielding.
And it definitely beats the theory of if they did it, it would probably just be a variant like they've done everything else. So
Yeah.
like Giratina, where you have, instead of it just being defense, you have the origin. So
Then you have
it's a
like Mega
completely
Giratina.
different Pokemon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like your Pokemon would be just a completely different. Your mega. It wouldn't really
Yeah.
mega evolve. It would just
If
be
they made it completely different, then it probably wouldn't help PvP that
right.
much, because then those tend, when they mega evolve, they tend to be more attack oriented.
So it would have to be
Um,
something where it's in the battle.
in the battle, like
Yeah.
one time I can mega evolve and you can do some cool animation and all this stuff. Um, or yeah, there's
Or
lots
maybe
of
it lasts a round or something. Like you mega
yeah,
evolve, and for the rest of that round until the Pokemon faints, or maybe you switch it out, it stays mega evolved.
yeah,
Something
yeah,
like that.
for
I
sure.
think that'd be pretty cool. I think they could make it work. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see it
Yeah, I
happening.
don't see it happening either.
One of my best buddies in the world, Michael Marcotte, asks, "Where is your favorite place you've ever been for Pogo?"
Ooh, man, that is a very tough question. Um, yeah, so the place that I played and I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm here, was definitely in Japan. Like
Everybody
first
says that
time,
it's like the most crazy. It's like a culture shock because it's like playing the
it's so
first day
amazing.
of when the game originally came out. That's what Holly said. Like it's like playing that first initial like month of Pokemon. Like everybody's out playing,
I
everybody's
remember
raiding.
showing up at Kinsho Station, and this is like the legendary grind spot where there's like 9 lures at like a train station, that kind of stuff, right? I remember going there like 6 in the morning and seeing like 20, 30 people grinding there.
That's epic.
And then the next day, Saturday at 6 a.m., I see 20, 30 people grinding there. I remember raiding Regirock, and I literally see 150 people around raiding Regirock. I was
Wow.
like, this is absolutely nuts. Like, I can't believe it, right? So that's certainly very memorable, but I have like a lot of like really great memories. Obviously, DC was really great. I think going to Philly for the Ultimate Showdown was amazing. Shoutcasting season 1 European championships was like incredible. That's like such a big high for me. Or going down to Argentina and seeing like how much they love battling. I remember like going there. They picked me up at the airport. They're like, oh, okay, King, let's go for lunch. Go for lunch. I literally haven't even ordered yet, and they're like, King, do you want to battle? You want to battle? I must have did like 30 battles
Oh man.
before I even ordered lunch, and I was starving at that point in time. I'm like, guys, I have to. And then I ordered lunch, and I couldn't even eat it because I
Because they
kept
were just like,
battling.
let's keep going. Oh, that's so cool.
And then we're going to a bar after. We go to a bar after. Like we went to a bar after they did like an 8-round regionals, super intense. And these guys were like, yeah, let's keep battling. Let's keep battling. Let's do this, right? I'm like literally battled like 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm like, you just battled all day in like these really intense matches, but they just like, it's not like in Japan where there's so many people playing Pokemon Go. In Argentina and many countries in South America, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, there's just so many people that want a PvP and that just want to battle. It's like, it's incredible, right?
That's
Like,
awesome.
and like they've really nailed it in terms of like making these tournaments not just about battling, but making an experience. Like I'm going to an event, right? Um, and like and enjoying it, all this stuff, right? So it's like going for community day. Like, yeah, you go for community day. You could be the person that you could be really competitive in community day and catch the most Pokemon or catch the most shinies, or you can go to community day and just enjoy the experience.
Right.
And for people, a lot of these more casual tournament goers, they go to these tournaments because they enjoy it. They're hanging out with their friends, they're experiencing it, all that stuff, even if they don't think that they're gonna win.
All
Yeah,
right.
a
Yeah.
lot of man. I've been to so many incredible places
So it's
to.
hard to pick just one.
It's so hard. Like you can go to Singapore and playing with Brandon and playing
Oh
out there
yeah, I
and seeing how
imagine.
incredible it is and how beautiful Singapore is. It's just like I've been very fortunate to go to many places to play Pokemon Go and meet so many incredible people. It's like I would never have guessed it.
So it sounds to me that Japan and Argentina are kind of like the two that
From like a
really
pure
stick out.
Pokemon
Yeah,
perspective, yeah, those two for sure.
that's awesome. Another question they ask: is Pokemon Go enough right now for you to make a living on YouTube?
No, I actually have 2 jobs. I only do YouTube for part time, and certainly it's like far from enough. So I think like for some of the bigger Pogo YouTubers, it's probably just barely enough, and
Right.
they certainly have like 10 times the following and 10 times the engagement that I have. I just do this for fun. Like if I were to do it from a monetary, like I have a master's in accounting. Like if I were to do it, if I were to view the time I spend on YouTube as like an investment, it would be absolutely the worst investment from a financial perspective. I do it because like I love building communities and I love embarking in new challenges and figuring out ways how I can help people grow and develop in whatever it is. And that's kind of like my life mantra.
All right, I think we're running out of questions here, but somebody back to the speed thing. Somebody said, "Why don't you make the less weight Pokemon the faster Pokemon?" So like the
uh,
skinnier, leaner Pokemon get to go first, and like the tubbier guys have to go
yeah,
second.
yeah, no, you can certainly. I think we'll just have like too big of a contrast. Like, um, yeah, no, it's certainly an idea. It's certainly an idea.
Like
I'll
the
just say
weights,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any like particular objections to that, except for like some like tiny. I'm trying to think of like Sableye.
Right.
Sableye probably doesn't weigh a lot, right?
No, it's
Uh,
tiny.
right. So it's tiny, right? So we'll always go first versus like a Pokemon that's historically been known to be fast, like Electrode or
Right.
Jolteon or Mewtwo, that kind of stuff. Like we're kind of like ignoring the lore of that, and not that I always tell people like Pokemon Go and Pokemon main series are different games,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
But I think I do like some of the lore of like some of these certain types are historically faster. Like electric types are known to be fast, for example, and there's certainly some exceptions like Ampharos, which is typically slower, right? Um, just doing it based off the weight is an
Yeah.
interesting idea and maybe like easy to implement, but
Then you'd have then the poor tubby boys. The tubby boys would be left out a lot, and then all your skinny boys would
yeah,
be running wild.
CMP, yeah, it's just for CMP, but
Forget mud boys. They'd be like, "Bring me my skinny boys. Let's
yeah,
go."
exactly. So it's certainly an idea, but I kind of want to stick to some of the Pokemon lore because I think there's a lot of like easy things to reference for that.
So a couple more questions, then we'll kind of wind down here. Um, do you think? I know Trainer Tips has talked about it. Do you think that we'll get breeding at some point?
I don't see why not.
And do you think it could impact PvP?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't typically like Niantic is geared towards like having higher IV, for the so in some senses like breeding could be useful, especially if it unlocks some like exclusive movesets, that kind of stuff. Like
That'd
I
be
think
awesome.
that'll be
Breeding moves.
useful. But if it's just like for getting certain types of Pokemon, then it might be useful for getting candy. But like in the long run, uh, candy is usually not an issue for most like common Pokemon, right? Or like Pokemon that spawn in the wild, for the ones that we use in PvP
All right.
in the long run. So
So my last question for you, because it looks like the questions count here has died down. Um, it might be a hard one to answer, so I'll kind of propose it to you in two ways. What cup? If there was a cup in this next season 2 that you could make, or you could choose, what would be your dream cup, or what would be your dream typing?
For me, I think I'll answer the second portion. I would love to see a cup where for normal types were allowed, but Vigoroth was banned.
Yes, I think that's a must. And
That's like that would be. I think it's almost a must for season 2
Yeah.
because I think there's like we saw in Montreal Safari Zone like Munchlax. Munchlax is a monster. Like,
Yeah.
but the thing is like Munchlax got overshadowed because of Vigoroth, right?
Yeah.
So I think Munchlax, Lanoon is a monster, and there's just like so many Pokemon, normal type Pokemon that typically normal types like have like a pretty wide and unpredictable move pool. So I think a cup where even Vigoroth, Noctowl, or banned.
Something that I would love, like I told you, I do a lot of themed Ultra League tournaments. So some of them I've done, like I did like a Valentine's Day one where we did like red, pink, white
Sure.
Pokemon
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
fire and ice types.
Yeah.
I did one where you could only use Pokemon that had a 5 in their Pokédex number. I
Yeah.
would love to see more themed tournaments, maybe where it's not necessarily type, but something like that. Maybe it's like their color or like
Sure.
something out of the box like
Shiny.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. I would love to see themes like that. And I think for me, the type that I want to see the most come back because I feel they got the least representation is water because they were only in Rainbow and you couldn't even use the full set of water Pokemon.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So water for me would be
Water is a pretty amazing. Like you could literally just have a cup with only water.
yeah, or just
Right?
maybe Gen
'Cause-
3 and Gen 4 Pokemon. That'd
Yeah,
be
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
cool.
Or like if you were to pick only a mono type cup where you only pick one typing, it's gonna be water.
Yeah.
Because water, like you could have everything from like Lantern to like Swampert to Tentacruel, like a whole bunch of
Yeah.
Kingdra. Like there's a whole bunch of different water types that are allowed that would make it a pretty fun cup by itself. So
Yeah, water would be awesome alone. But I would love it. I'm hoping that's soon. We get a water predominant cup, or at least it gets a little bit more representation because you just really got to use Gen 1 and Gen 2 water guys.
yeah,
So
for sure.
All right, so how we usually end the show, King, is we talk about something that we're looking forward to. So let's just kind of keep it to Pokemon Go or Silverino. What are you looking forward to in Season 2?
I'm looking forward to, for me, I kind of view it as like two main things. One is like bigger tournaments, making like bigger spectacles, and like more watchability, like more streams, higher quality streams, and then I think that will engage a lot of the community. I think those are the two things that I'm looking forward to the most, and I think we'll definitely see it play out in Season 2.
For me, I want to get my tournaments that I'm running to be bigger. Right now, we're hitting maybe like 25. I think the biggest we've had was like 28.
Yeah.
So I want to hit more people, and I'd love to start streaming, maybe do a little announcing. Like
Yeah, for sure.
I went to school for communication, so like originally I wanted to be an ESPN announcer.
Yeah.
But that hasn't turned out that way. But I would love to announce Pokemon Go matches. I
For
watch
sure,
you and
yeah,
Zionic,
yeah. Well,
and you and
I think
Zionic are so good.
Yeah, engage with. I don't think I'm actually even that good of a public speaker, to be honest. Like, but
You'd never guess that though, because you're
Yeah.
so smooth in your videos. You're so good in the shoutcast. Like, you would never guess that.
for me, it's just easy because I love this. I love this so much.
Right.
Like I'm so get so excited about it. But I think there's there's a lot of opportunities to be able to shoutcast and I think just reach out to Go Stadium and see. I think they're always looking. Think right now one of the toughest things for streams is finding good shoutcasters, people that can speak well, that are entertaining, and then as well know PvP at a pretty high level. It's a pretty rare commodity because like a lot of people that know PvP really well are out battling, right? They don't
Yeah.
want to spend their time like behind the mic and that kind of stuff. Not that they don't like it, just like they would be rather battling, and I think that's appropriate. And then finding people that speak well can be really challenging.
Yeah.
Especially in the gaming community. So
The best I've done is a few years ago. Static Rift did announcing for a Street Fighter tournament,
oh, nice.
and the winner got to go to like the big Street Fighter tournament in Florida.
Yeah, like,
so we got to announce that, and that was pretty sweet. So that's kind of like the only announcing I've done video game wise, but I did like sports casting and stuff like that too. But I would love.
Well, I think reach out to Go Stadium. Let
Yeah.
these guys know. Like I think no one knows right now, so let them know. And
I would love to.
I think they're always willing to give people a shot, or at least I'm encouraging them to give people a shot. And I think that'd be really cool. I think you'd be really good.
And something else I'm looking forward to is I want to get a huge panel on this show at some point. So we've gotten, we've had you on, we've had Zionic on, we've had Polly on. I would love to get maybe like 5 or 6 of you guys and just have a big panel of the best PvP people, the best, normal
Yeah.
Pokemon goers.
Let's make
Like
it happen.
that's
Why
my
not?
dream at some point this year to get a bunch of you on and just have this gigantic panel.
Yeah.
I would
No,
love
I
that.
think it's always fun to talk about PvP
Yeah.
and think about the future and discuss the past and all that stuff. So I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, legitimately, Pokemon is like life for me. So it's like I love talking about it. I'm so happy you came on and you spent your 2 hours and a half with me, just chatting about Pokemon. So I
Well, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
I
I
definitely
love.
want to have you come back on again. I would love, for you and Zionic to come on when maybe regionals happen.
Sure. Yeah. I think that'd be great.
Actually have you both on like we planned. But congrats to Zionic. I know we didn't say at the beginning of the show, but he had a wonderful baby boy, and he's gonna, one day be a Pokemon trainer as well, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Thank you.
I'm gonna do the ending thing here, King. Just stay on the line though, because I'm gonna have you do a drop for us.
Sure. Okay. No problem.
Okay. So thank you guys for listening to the show. If you're new to the show, please, check out our other stuff. We go live every Tuesday night. We usually stream a game on Thursday. I'm not sure we're going to stream this week, but maybe. But generally we stream on Twitch on Thursday. So if you guys like what you heard, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, give us a like, check us out. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Static Riff Radio. Give us a follow. Talk to us. We're very active. We want to talk to you guys. We want to, get all those things out. So, please give us a like, a listen, all that stuff. And thank you for tuning in tonight. Thank you, King, for being on the show. Remember, stay on the line. And thank you, everybody. This has been Static Rift. You can find us here on the Go Network. Same static place, same static time. I love you all. Good night.